20 witnesses that have appeared over the past 2 days, and there were six, counting 7 of them, maybe 8 of them actually even 9 witnesses this morning. As I said, they're moving through rather quickly. We're still in the place right now in this trial where the state is laying the foundation of what happened. Unlike many crimes, particularly homicides, there is not some individual location where all of this occurred, because of not only the uncertainty over where the actual homicide took place and with what method. There's also the trail of where these 2 individuals, Maxwell Anderson and Sade Robinson, spent their time in the hours leading up to her death, and then what happened after. You have today law enforcement officers being called to talk about some of those Life 360 pings. That is an app on a phone that Sade Robinson had so that she could share her location with family and friends so they could make sure that she arrived to her destinations safely. A lot of people have it. You may have it or know someone in your family who does. It is something that uses cell phone technology, GPS and other things to keep track of where you've been or where you are right now. Of course, it only works as long as the phone still has battery life, and that comes into play in some of the testimony that we heard today. One of the people we heard from was Evelyn Gertz, who is a co-worker and friend of Sade Robinson, and I believe it was Elena Fisher, another friend of Sade Robinson's we heard from, who had that Life 360 app and was sharing location with Sade. She did talk to police. She called Sade Robinson her best friend, and she said that while they hadn't seen each other very much in person recently, they regularly communicated over the phone, and of course she had her location. She said that she noticed through that Life 360 app that Sade's movement had stopped at 4 a.m. on April 2nd and showed her in the area of Warnemount Park, and at that point the battery had died. And in fact, Elena Fisher provided screenshots from her Life 360 app to Milwaukee police, either Milwaukee police or the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, but to law enforcement, to indicate what that showed about her movements and where her movements ended. Among the things they presented to the jury today were screenshots of those movements that showed that toward the end of the night or early in the morning, between 1 and 4 a.m., her phone had gotten a low battery, which meant it was sending less detail about her movements. Earlier in the night, it was saying things like you could tell what speed her phone was moving, 69 miles per hour, or there was hard braking at a certain intersection. But as it got later into the morning, that battery had gotten low, there was less specific information. Ultimately, the phone stopped sending any further signal. The last known location was near Warnemount Park. We, of course, know that's where Sade Robinson's leg was found by a passerby on the morning of April 2nd. What happened in between is, of course, all the subject of this case. Among the other witnesses we heard from today, we heard from Milwaukee Police Detective Nora Donegan, formerly Police Officer Nora Burlow, who worked for District 5. That is the police district that received the notification that Sade Robinson was missing. She hadn't shown up for her work shift at Pizza Shuttle on April 2nd, and co-workers and friends became concerned. They went to police. Then Officer Burlow, now Detective Donegan, went with her partner, Officer James Terrell, to 1858 North Commerce Street. That is the Brewers Point Apartments. If you're not familiar with that specific name of an apartment complex, you might know what it's right next door to, and that's Lakefront Brewery. So this is right along the Milwaukee River, and it's immediately next door to Lakefront Brewery. They went there to check on Sade and find out what was wrong. Now, one of the things we heard from Detective Donegan is that then Officer Burlow, when she was headed to the apartment to do this welfare check, she knew that the apartment and the missing person, the name was Sade Robinson. She also knew there had already been an earlier report of a suspicious car fire from earlier that same morning, around 7 o'clock in the morning on April 2nd. We've talked about the car fire that occurred near 30th and Galena, a car that was apparently set on fire intentionally behind an abandoned building, sort of out of view, and it looked like it was, firefighters would later say it looked like it was immediately suspicious. That car had already been identified and connected to its owner, Sade Robinson. So now Officer Burlow, now Detective Donegan, and her partner are going on this welfare check for a person whose car was involved in a suspicious fire earlier this morning. Now she's missing. And Officer, or Detective Donegan, I should say, said during testimony she also was aware there had been news reports already of a human leg that had been found near Warnemount Park. There was no immediate connection, but she said she got a funny feeling that all of these things might be tied together. There's this human leg that's found in a park. There's a suspicious car fire that comes back to Sade Robinson, and later that night, friends and coworkers report Sade Robinson missing. Now she's on the way to go do a welfare check. Officer Donegan, or Detective Donegan, did say one thing that the jury heard, but that ultimately was objected to, and that objection was sustained. She said, "I was worried because as a woman who's dated, I became scared," or something like that, or I was worried for her. The defense objected to that statement. The judge sustained it, but the jury heard it. So whether or not that has an impact is something that they will remember. Who knows? It is officially not part of the testimony, but you can't unhear what you've heard. So that was Detective Donegan. We had police officer Nicholas Kropp, who testified, and see if I have my notes as to what he essentially testified to. He was following the pings of Sade's phone to the south side of Milwaukee, and he talked about the extensive searches that were done all over the city in the areas where they knew that the vehicle had been. Corridors 75 feet wide between the road and waterways or railroads. They had dozens of officers that were doing methodical searches looking for additional remains, and they did not find those additional remains in those areas, including the area of Warnemount Park, where the leg had been previously discovered. We heard, as I mentioned, from Evelyn Gertz, who was a co-worker and friend who also had the Life 360 tracking and noticed the dead phone that stopped sending a signal at 4 a.m. on the 2nd. We heard from Detective Jonathan, and I'm going to guess at the pronunciation because I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's Giat or Gilat. In any case, he's the detective for the sheriff's office, and he showed some video from Pizza Shuttle. And I said the state is laying a foundation here. They're really laying out the movements of where we know Sade Robinson was and the gaps in between where she was. So the video he shows is her leaving Pizza Shuttle at 5 p.m. at the end of her shift on April 1st. We know from text messages and other surveillance videos that we're going to have introduced in this trial at a later time that she then left and went to meet Maxwell Anderson at the Twisted Fisherman for their date. But the video shows her leaving Pizza Shuttle at 5 p.m., roughly 5 o'clock. And then there was another officer who testified showing video from, I think it was an officer who was recalled, detective from the sheriff's office was recalled, Joseph Blancher, who showed video from her apartment building at 9 a.m. that she was leaving and that she left in a direction that would be consistent with going to her shift at Pizza Shuttle. It seems that they're establishing just her pattern the day of her disappearance, which is she leaves home at 9 a.m., she goes to Pizza Shuttle, and then she leaves Pizza Shuttle at 5 p.m. We know from there that she is on to the date with Maxwell Anderson. That covers that whole time period before the date. Say we know where she was. She was at work. Now she's off to go on this date. One of the other really important witnesses we heard from today was Detective Kayla Bierke, and she was the one who, or one of the officers who went to do a search of Sade Robinson's apartment. Now, at the time, they were looking for her. They didn't know where she was, if she was missing, if she was dead. But they're doing a search of the apartment, and she described her apartment as essentially messy, but nothing more messy than, a typical college student. Nothing concerning. What they didn't see was any signs of forced entry, any signs of a struggle or a break-in. And then the state asked the detective about something that was found inside a safe, a locked safe inside Sade Robinson's apartment. The state brought this up, but they only brought it up because the defense was about to anyway. Just before her testimony, during a break, there was a conversation with the jury out of the room. The defense wanted to enter into evidence that 47 pills of suspected methamphetamine were found in that safe in Sade Robinson's apartment. as well as THC, marijuana. They wanted to introduce that. The state said, what's the relevance here? What does that have to do with this case at all? And the defense argued, defense attorney Tony Cotton argued that if she had illegal drugs, if she was purchasing illegal drugs, that could be evidence that she was mixed up with people in the community who might pose a danger, and that might be a theory that they present later in the case. The judge ultimately determined that while it could be prejudicial to the jury, it had relevance, and that it was the value for testimony and admissibility outweighed that. So she allowed the testimony. The state then brings it up, asks about it, and the defense, of course, asks some questions about that as well. So the jury has heard about it. We're at 12:41 right now. I believe we have, we're going to take a break. In just a little bit, we're going to hear from Fox 6's Stephanie Quirk, who's been following the trial today. But we're going to take a break right now, and we'll come back with more right after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
And Fox 6's Brian Polson here again at the Wisconsin Live Desk. We're going to go out in just a moment to talk to Fox 6's Stephanie Quirk, who's outside the Milwaukee County Courthouse. But one thing I want to tell you is you can look right here at the bottom of your screen. Right there, you see not only my name, but our email address, fox6investigators@fox.com. As we're doing this coverage here on our live stream, if you have any questions about the trial, if there's something you missed, if there's something you'd like some clarification on, any comments you'd like to make, send them to that email address. If I get a chance to keep up with that throughout the trial, I'll try to address some of what we see, but wanted to let you know there's that way to reach out to us. I do want to reach out right now to Stephanie Quirk, who is live outside the Milwaukee County Courthouse. Stephanie, you have been following this trial. You've been watching testimony today. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen and what has stood out to you so far.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of focus I noticed today. Prosecutors seem to be focusing on Robinson's final locations through witness testimonies and evidence that's been presented. We know there were several witnesses today. Those include law enforcement officials as well as some of Robinson's friends who testified about cell phone data that showed, Robinson's locations pinged on the day before she was reported missing, which was April 2nd. Again, this is all going on in the courthouse right now. Trial is on break until 1:45, we believe, but on the defense side, Anderson's attorneys are just basically attempting to poke holes in the state's case today, but a lot of surveillance evidence and a lot of testimony from witnesses, specifically on the cell phone location using the Find My iPhone app. Actually, one of her friends testified, and coworkers, former coworkers at the Wisconsin Athletic Club, testified about that cell phone data on April 1st, saying that Robinson's phone pinged to Warnemont Park, and if you remember, that's where her severed leg was discovered on April 2nd of last year, the same day she was reported missing, Brian.
Are you, I'm just curious, are you, as you're in the courthouse, are you watching this from inside the courtroom? Have you been outside the courtroom watching a video feed? I'm just curious about the setting here.
Yeah, so I've been on filling in on the wake up shift this week. So we've been kind of parked right out here outside the courthouse, and we've been watching it through the stream and just obviously monitoring the chat that we all have, just kind of logging and taking notes through there, and giving viewers live updates of it pretty much as it's happening.
Well, you know, it's funny if you give people a real behind-the-scenes look at what's going on, Stephanie. You think about the fact that we've got you outside giving these updates throughout the morning. I'm here in the live desk trying to keep people up to speed. We have a couple of different reporters and photographers who are in the building taking care of all of this, and of course all the people back here. It's a lot of resources devoted to following this case, which is going to take quite a bit of time. Obviously, that underscores kind of the importance to the community of a case like this, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We heard from the judge that the case is anticipated to last up to 2 weeks, and just even, you know, in any case, any trial, you know, jury selection is a process, but you could tell that the community and just viewers and the Milwaukee people, they, you know, there is a lot of attention on this case, and you know, the way that it's the way it'll play out, I guess.
From where you are outside, have you seen anything? Are there any sort of demonstrations, any family members, community members out there today, or has that been pretty quiet?
For the most part, you know, we've noticed, actually, Aaron Mabin, who I know was on the live desk yesterday, he's been seeing some people who have just been coming out to sit in the courtroom gallery throughout the course of the trial just to support the family and loved ones of Robinson. As, you know, obviously you hear the details that are read by prosecutors and defense and everybody, all the evidence that's shown in the courtroom. It's heavy stuff, heavy, very gruesome stuff. And, you know, you imagine your loved one, that's your loved one. So I think that the community has showed up in that part, even just going there to support in the gallery. I haven't seen anyone out here specifically today, but I'm sure there's people in there supporting as well.
I would imagine we'll see a lot more as things get closer to this case wrapping up, whether it's in a couple of weeks or whenever this is. I do wonder, you know, just in following this, you've had to sit and watch this testimony. I'm watching it. We're all keeping eyes on this. We have a digital manager who is transcribing each and every witness so that we can go back and review those things. But one thing that stands out to me, and I wonder how it is for you as you watch this, sometimes you watch a trial and the testimony is emotional and it's gripping and it's personal and it's human, and this is a case that's going to have some of that, but then a lot of it is really technical and dry. Like I said, we're reviewing video surveillance and time stamps and what does this image show versus that, and let's look at the pings of a cell phone. Some of this it's kind of hard to keep your focus and then make sure you don't miss something critical, right?
100%, and you actually said it perfectly. Obviously, during opening statements, you know, that's very grabbing. Those opening statements from both the defense and the state, just basically laying out their case, or a preview of their case. But, you know, now hearing how the actual evidence is being presented, you're right on the fact that there's a lot of technical information, cell phone data, times, pings here, you know, surveillance video and things like that, just kind of trying to connect the dots as they present it to the jury. So it is a lot of technical information, and you really do have to be paying attention, because, you know, you could miss something if you don't.
I know that we heard in opening statements from the defense that for the first time they get to sort of give their story, and one of theirs, a big thing they're focusing on is there's no murder weapon that's been found, there's no bloody crime scene, there's no DNA that gives a direct evidentiary connection between Maxwell Anderson and an action that kills Sade Robinson. So they're saying, you know, don't just listen to what the state has, listen to what they don't. But today I thought it was interesting that they really wanted to focus on those pills in her safe. There's no evidence that there was any methamphetamine or any other illegal drug in her system. But the defense also said, well, that could be because her body had been dismembered and the blood had been lost, and so they couldn't detect that sort of thing. But they raised it because they said maybe it means she was mixed up with the wrong people. She was mixed up with the kind of people who have a propensity for violence. I feel like that's the first we've heard of any kind of potential alternative theory that, hey, maybe it was someone in the drug trade who might have killed her and not Maxwell Anderson. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see, you're right on the fact that it's interesting to actually see the defense side of how they're kind of handling this and how they're approaching this, and, you know, their approach in order to try to prove that, you know, Anderson is not guilty of this. It's interesting to hear that, and I remember from the opening statement, his attorney actually said that, and I quote, he said something along the lines of when he was making his opening remarks, he said that, you know, just because they knew each other, he said he doesn't deny any of the evidence that shows that they did, in fact, know each other and went on a date, but just because they did doesn't mean he killed her. So it was interesting, and that kind of stuck with me out of the opening remarks on the defense side, hearing that. So it's interesting to see how the defense is kind of approaching this and how it's playing out in the courtroom.
It seems like that's why it's so important for the state to try to cover every minute of time where Sade was and where she might have been, because if not Maxwell Anderson, then who did it? Because she certainly didn't kill and dismember herself. Someone did. And
Right.
if he's with her the whole time, which is what they're trying to prove, then who else could have possibly done it? Obviously, we're going to hear a lot more about that. Stephanie, I know you've had a really long day. Appreciate you being here with us on the Wisconsin Live Desk, and we'll talk to you more throughout the course of the trial.
Absolutely. Brian, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So we are. Oh, I just went right back. So look, I'm punching up my own stuff in here, Stephanie. I don't even know what I'm hitting sometimes. We'll talk to you soon again. All right. So we have probably about another, 45 minutes or so, maybe close to an hour before the court is going to resume. And for those of you who are tuning in for some of this, I want to do a little bit of recap of what happened on the first day of testimony, some of the stuff we talked about in those opening statements, because if you come into the middle of something like this, you might go, I haven't heard enough, I'm lost. I'm going to get you up to speed. We'll talk about where we've gone so far in the trial and where we are today. But we're going to take a break, and we'll do some more of that right after we come back.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Brian Polson back here in the Wisconsin Live Desk studio. It is 12:55. The Maxwell Anderson trial is currently in its lunch recess. here on day 3 of the trial. This is the trial in the death and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson of Milwaukee, a young woman who went on a first date and never came home. The court is in recess now. I believe they're scheduled to come back at 1:30, although yesterday they resumed at 1:45. So we've got some time for me to take you through what we know so far, how we got here, and what we've heard so far in this case. We've known for quite some time essentially what the state laid out because criminal complaints are made public early in a charging process. But it's a one-sided document. So what we've heard in that case is essentially all of the pertinent evidence that they believe ties Maxwell Anderson to the death. Most importantly, they were exchanging text messages on April 1st of 2024, where they're planning to meet out at a place called Twisted Fisherman on Canal Street in Milwaukee. Maxwell Anderson had at some point worked there because he says, let's meet there because I got to go pick up my W-2. So he's going to pick up some tax records from the Twisted Fisherman. Meanwhile, she says, sure, I'll meet you there. You think about it, it was April 1st. That's around tax time. It makes sense. So they go on this date. There's video surveillance of them sitting at the bar together, enjoying some food and a drink. There's the still shot right there of the two of them. That's Maxwell Anderson on the left. At least that's what police have said is Maxwell Anderson. And on the right, that is Sade Robinson. After they're at Twisted Fisherman for a time, they then go to a place called Duke's on Water. That is a bar on Water Street in Milwaukee. And according to cell phone location information that's in that criminal complaint, they're there for about 2.5 hours. They stay at the bar on Water Street until roughly 9 o'clock. And then they leave again, or at least the phone ping suggests that they leave again. And I suspect we are going to see and hear from people at Duke's on Water who will talk about maybe what occurred at that location. Although it could be tricky and interesting because the estate of Sade Robinson has sued Duke's on Water and Twisted Fisherman for serving alcohol to Sade Robinson, who was 19 years old. That is a lawsuit that was filed just last month and is still pending. But in any case, we're probably going to hear a little bit more about what happened there. But we know what prosecutors say. They left at that time, around 9 o'clock. And the phone ping travels down south from downtown Milwaukee to the south side, where we know Maxwell Anderson's home is. And it is at that location where there is surveillance video from across the street that police say, or prosecutors say, shows shadowy figures inside the home. Essentially silhouettes, I should say. Not shadowy like there's something wrong with them, but silhouettes as you might see through curtains or blinds of a lit up place at night, showing that there are occupants of the place around the time the cell phone ping arrives at that location. And then after a couple of hours or a few hours in that location, the cell phone ping shows what appears to be Sade's phone then leaving that scene, and those silhouettes have ceased. It is not clear if it shows anything that looks like any sort of violent activity. It doesn't sound like it did. And we know that police later did not find any kind of bloody crime scene inside Maxwell Anderson's apartment. If there had been one, then he obviously did an incredible job of cleaning the place up and getting rid of any kind of potential DNA evidence, or it didn't happen there at all. And that's, of course, what the defense is trying to raise. But we know, we haven't heard what the state found, but in opening statements, they didn't make any mention of any kind of bloody crime scene. In fact, I believe the prosecutor said, you won't find one. What they did find were some photos on Maxwell Anderson's phone that show what they say was Sade Robinson lying face down on his couch with his hand grabbing her breast, and also a photo on his phone of underwear and pants being removed from what they believe was Sade Robinson because they were able to match the pants to what she's wearing in that photo you saw just a minute ago. I don't know if Delaney Reed, who is the one who is setting up all this for me, if you can bring that photo back up again of them sitting at Twisted Fisherman. But if you're able to, the jeans she is wearing in that photo, police are saying that matches the blue jeans that she was wearing on in the photo that was on Maxwell Anderson's phone. But they leave Maxwell Anderson's address, according to prosecutors. And what happens after that, well, it's much harder to say. But the vehicle goes to the south side, it goes down toward and ultimately stops in a place that is near Warnemount Park. And that is the last place that Sade Robinson's cell phone sends out a signal of her location. We heard testimony today from some of her friends who had shared locations with her through an app called Life 360, and that showed her at around 4 a.m. still in that area of Warnermont Park, and then the phone went dead. So when friends checked to see where she was the next day or the day after, they said it still showed her at Warnermont Park on April 2nd at 4 a.m. If you've ever had any kind of a location app like that, you know when the battery dies, it will show the last known location, but that's it. It stops right there. So they testified to that as well. What we're really hearing so far is the state laying just that foundation of the trail of movements. And all along the way, as Stephanie Quirk mentioned moments ago, the defense is trying to poke holes in that case. The defense has, in particular today, raised questions about, Life 360 may show where Sade's phone was, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's where Maxwell Anderson was. And that's one of the things they're going to be talking about throughout the case. The prosecution may be taking those phone locations and saying this proves the two of them were here. We don't necessarily know that that's the case. At least that's something the state's got to prove through evidence. And obviously there's a lot more to come on that. We did hear at the very end of the morning shift today from a firefighter from the Milwaukee Fire Department, and I want to try to see if I can bring up that testimony if you bear with me for just a moment. It was a captain from the Milwaukee Fire Department, Christian Hoos, and he responded to the car fire. So on the morning of April 2nd, after the date that Maxwell and Sade went on, at about 7:30 in the morning, there's a car fire, and it is 7:30 a.m. This is around the area of 30th and Lisbon in Milwaukee, and firefighters immediately said that this looks suspicious. Why? Well, because it was behind an abandoned building. It looked like it's not a place someone would necessarily park for any legitimate reason, and then so they felt that it was a suspicious fire at that time. We know there has been video surveillance, or we've seen video that bystanders ultimately took of that fire. There is no surveillance video showing who set the fire, but there is surveillance video that was mentioned in opening statements that we have not seen yet of passersby who are coming by, and apparently, at least prosecutors say, based on their reactions and what they can be heard saying, they saw the person who set the fire, and they pointed and said, he did it. We're going to probably hear that testimony and maybe see that video later in this case. But we know that this fire captain said today he felt the fire immediately was suspicious, and we know that that turned out to be the 2020 blue Honda Civic that belongs to Sade Robinson. So her car is set on fire, her leg is found in the park, and then she's reported missing later that night. We, of course, all know how that led us to where we are today. I think we have now heard in this trial, I believe I said earlier, from a total of 20 witnesses, and the vast majority of them have been law enforcement. Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office detectives, they ultimately became the lead investigators because of the finding of this human leg in a county park. So they led this, but Milwaukee police certainly have been involved along the way because of the missing persons reports, the search of Sade's apartment. So we've heard from a lot of detectives, some MPD officers, but every so often we'll get someone who comes in who's a friend, an associate, someone who knew Sade. And that's the time where you get more personal and at times emotional testimony. And if you talk to defense experts, I know we had Julius Kim, who's been helping us throughout this trial, criminal defense attorney of Kim and Lavoie. He was on FOX 6 News last night, and FOX 6 News at 9, I believe he said, that's purposeful. If you are the state here and you have to lay out this really methodical, intricate testimony, it can get dry, it can get maybe unemotional, and every so often you have to remind the jury there's a person behind all of this. And so the order in which some of these witnesses are being called is not accidental. The fact that every so often we get a personal friend or a coworker or the leasing agent at her apartment complex who had a lot of conversations with her, or the maintenance guy at the apartment complex who said she was excited about her date. Those things are done as a reminder, not just to lay the foundation of evidence, but as a reminder to the jury that there is a person here whose life has been lost. And that's something that defense experts and prosecutors will tell you is important if you're trying to win a case or convince a jury that the person who's sitting in that defense chair is guilty. I'm going to take one more commercial break, and we're going to talk a little bit more about one thing we have not heard about yet. It is something that seems to be a very important element to this case, but it wasn't mentioned at all in opening statements, and I'm still not clear if it's going to come up at trial. And I'm going to talk about that when we come back right after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Fox 6's Brian Polson here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. So I told you right before that break, we're going to talk about something that was not mentioned in the opening statements by either the prosecution or the defense, but that was something we have talked about on Fox 6 News. That is, I think, a pretty important piece if it comes up at all. I've been trying to find so you're watching me live as I do this. I'm trying to find this particular document in our files. And if I don't, I'm just going to tell you what I know from memory. But what I'm getting at here is there was a search warrant filed, a number of search warrant affidavits filed throughout this case as police wanted to search cell phone records. They needed to search Sade Robinson's apartment. They needed to search Maxwell Anderson's home. They actually went into Anderson's home not once, but twice. And the second time was because of information that came to light after they had done their initial search. And I am not locating the actual search warrant affidavit that talks about this right now, so I'll just tell you what I recall. A confidential informant came forward at some point after authorities had already searched Maxwell Anderson's apartment. And that confidential informant, according to an affidavit that was filed with the court for permission to search a second time, this confidential informant said that he or she had met with Maxwell Anderson personally and was in his basement, that this person observed things like plastic tarps that were up in the basement and are surrounding a utility sink, and that Maxwell Anderson told this confidential informant that he planned to murder Sade Robinson. That's a pretty alarming thing for someone to say and someone to tell authorities. It's not clear at all who this confidential informant is. It's not clear why they wouldn't have gone to authorities right away and said this before anything happened. And it's also not clear if there's any credibility to what that person says. We do know that the state didn't bring it up during opening statements. if you look at the search warrant return, which means what the officers or what the law enforcement agency that went in found, one among the things that they removed were some of the plastic piping underneath that utility sink in Maxwell Anderson's basement. Presumably, they're thinking if we didn't find DNA all around it, maybe he didn't clean up what went through the sink. That's my speculation, but it's based on what's in this search warrant affidavit. So they took some of the piping from underneath that utility sink. We haven't heard anything about DNA of Sade Robinson being found in there. So my only suspicion could be that the crime lab did not come up with any positive results from that either. Perhaps that is why we're not hearing anything from this confidential informant. Whoever it was, that informant's statement was enough to convince a judge to authorize the second search warrant, but we have not heard anything yet about that being presented. Will that be someone who is among the people named on this witness list? We wouldn't know the name because they're only listed in the report as a confidential informant. We don't know. And it may well be that that has completely gone by the wayside, and it's something we can ask the attorneys about after the case resolves. But of course, there's a lot of testimony to come, so it remains to be seen what happens with that. There's a lot more people we're obviously going to hear from throughout the course of this trial. We're going to hear from people who were with or who saw Sade Robinson that night, the last people who were with her before she went on her date with Maxwell Anderson. We're probably going to hear from some people at the bars where she was seen, for instance, Twisted Fisherman and Dukes on Water. But most of the people that are named as witnesses are law enforcement. And so this is going to be a case that's going to come down to, as we've talked about throughout, to digital evidence. That is surveillance videos, certainly some witness testimony, cell phone pings. We're not sure what else. I believe there is, if I understand it correctly, some DNA evidence that is attached to the hoodie that Maxwell Anderson was wearing, that police say he was wearing not only in that snapshot we've seen from the Twisted Fisherman bar that you saw just a little bit ago here, but also what he's been seen wearing in, for instance, surveillance from a Milwaukee County transit system bus that he boarded not long after the suspicious car fire in the area of that car fire on the north side of Milwaukee. So it may well be that there's some DNA attached to that that might be relevant or interesting. We'll have to wait and see what comes of it. So as I said before, we've heard from about 20 witnesses, I think, so far, and there are more than 250 state witnesses listed as potential people to be called. Yesterday, a total of 11 all day. We had 9 different people called this morning. So they're accelerating a little more quickly through the people they've called, at least so far today. No idea how many the state has listed or how many the defense will call in the defense of Max Anderson. It is unlikely that he will testify on his own behalf. We've talked to defense experts like Julius Kim who say it is rarely a good move for the defense to subject a defendant to the kind of cross-examination that would occur in a case like this when really they don't have to prove his innocence. The state has to prove his guilt. So they're going to put the state to that burden, and it is often determined to be the wisest course of action for a defendant to just let the state do that without the opportunity for any kind of cross-examination, especially in a case like this, where the one person who really knows what happened to Sade Robinson, at least during his presence, is Max Anderson. And I say Max. We've called him Maxwell throughout. It's interesting, his attorney calls him Max Anderson. It sounds as though he was known maybe among friends as Max. In any case, Max or Maxwell, he's the defendant in this case. We do know that there's a lot of people who are following and watching this. Sade's family and friends. Maxwell Anderson's family has been in the courtroom, and we're going to continue to hear throughout the next couple of weeks from our reporters who are both in the courtroom, in the hallway outside the courtroom, and people like Stephanie Quirk who are outside giving us updates from outside the Milwaukee County Courthouse. It is 1:15, 1:14 now. Court is in recess until, I believe, officially 1:30. What, it is 1:45? Okay, Delaney's telling me again it'll be 1:45 today. Here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, we're going to continue with our live coverage. We're going to take you up to 1:45, giving you recaps and analysis of what we've seen so far. We're also going to obviously have the trial coverage right here that you can watch here on Fox Local and on our live stream. At any time, you can go to our FOX6 News Milwaukee YouTube channel, and you can watch there. There's no commentary, there's no introductions. It's just a raw feed direct from our pool at the courthouse. So you can watch that there as well throughout the course of this trial. Lots of ways to keep up with, well, probably the biggest trial of the year here, certainly in Milwaukee County and in the Milwaukee area. So let's go back over. One thing I haven't done is let's talk about what, if you're just catching up with things, what did you miss yesterday? What happened on day 2? Well, first of all, the biggest thing, day 1 was jury selection. And if we haven't, you haven't heard much about that, I can tell you again, as we talked yesterday, that there are 15 members of this jury. And that is, you said, wait a minute, there's juries are 12 people. That's true. There will be 12 ultimately who decide this case. But there are 3 extras just in case, due to the length of the trial, they have to excuse someone or dismiss someone, whether it's for personal reasons or for some sort of a question or misconduct, or maybe there's a conflict that is discovered later. So there's usually at least 1 alternate in the case, sometimes 2. In this case, there are 3 to try to safeguard against getting under that required 12 juror number. Among the 15 jurors who are watching this case, 4 are from Oak Creek. By happenstance, it just seemed to be really popular in the jury pool. There were an awful lot of people from Oak Creek for whatever reason. Milwaukee, there are 3, 2 from Greenfield, 1 Hales Corners, and 1 each from South Milwaukee, St. Francis, Wauwatosa, West Allis, and Whitefish Bay. The jury is made up of 12 women and 3 men. 9 of them are married, 6 are unmarried. 10 of those jurors have kids, and 5 do not. 12 white, 2 black, 1 Asian. Those are based on simply observations. We don't know for certain their identities in terms of their racial or ethnic identity. We know that they have a variety of jobs. These are the people who will decide Maxwell Anderson's guilt. There's a registered nurse, a nurse practitioner, a social worker, an auto mechanic, a massage therapist, a mail clerk, a retired TV ad salesperson, a graphic designer, a data analyst, a marketing executive, an IT project manager, commercial snow removal, and there's a production manager. One of the things I think about when I hear that is, if you've ever been called for jury duty, you think, I'm going to miss time. Sometimes it might be nice to get away from work for a little bit, but 2 weeks away from your life can be tough, at least 2 weeks away from work. So a lot of people here who are missing out on a lot of work, and it's always a service to the community for the people who give their time to sit on these jury panels. They are not sequestered. If you're wondering that, they are not sequestered in terms of like being put up in a hotel overnight where they can't go see family and friends. Instead, there's a sequestration order, which essentially is, don't talk about the case with anybody and avoid media. Don't go looking and reading news stories and watching news coverage of the case so you don't taint yourself as a juror. So that is sort of the admonishment that they're given, but they still are able to go home each night, be with their families, and go about the rest of their lives. They just aren't supposed to talk about the case. We've heard of many other cases. You think of something like the, I think infamously of the O.J. Simpson trial, and people who were sequestered for months and months away from their families and couldn't, that's a much bigger commitment. Obviously, this is still a pretty large commitment, but those are the 15 people who will ultimately decide if Maxwell Anderson is guilty of the murder of Sade Robinson or if he is acquitted. On day 2 of the trial, we heard opening statements, and probably the most significant thing we heard was not just the state laying out what it believes happened. We really already knew effectively what the state's case was because we had the criminal complaint, which lays out enough to satisfy the prosecutor that the charges should be filed. But that doesn't mean the state's always laying out its best evidence. Sometimes they hold some things back. What we didn't know before yesterday was, did the state come across some absolutely rock-solid DNA evidence that says, here's, was there a weapon? Here's a gun, here's a knife, here's a hammer, here's tools for sawing that have DNA from Maxwell. None of that. None of that came up. And the defense got to make its case. And in the defense's case, they raised that point. In fact, attorney Tony Cotton used the phrase, there is a mountain of reasonable doubt here, his words, but he's pointing to the fact that there is no murder weapon that's ever been found. there was no bloody crime scene. And while it seems to be suggested that Sade Robinson was probably killed at Maxwell Anderson's home, just based on the way things happen in the timeline, if that's the case, then why isn't her DNA all over that place? That's what the defense is raising. And so the state has not been able to demonstrate how she was killed. We don't know if they will, but they certainly didn't mention it in opening statements. And the defense also raised the question of why. What was his motivation? The text messages between them seemed to be lighthearted. They were meeting out for a date. There were no threats. There was no indication that, other than what we later hear from this confidential informant, that there was any pre-planning of something like this. We just don't know. But the defense is saying that there's nothing there. And finally, the defense said that in addition to the fact that there is not this sort of murder weapon or this bloody crime scene, they say effectively the state's case is circumstantial, that someone else could have done this. But they don't have to prove who it was. They don't have to prove somebody else did it. They just have to make the state meet their burden of proof that Maxwell Anderson did. And of course, we know in our criminal justice system that can be a difficult standard to reach. It is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. A long way to go in this trial before we know if the prosecution is going to be able to prove that case, and there's certainly a lot more evidence to come. I'm going to take another break, and we'll talk more about what happened on the first day of testimony after those opening statements. We'll do that right after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
All right, Fox 6's Brian Polson here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. It is 1:23 on Thursday. This is May 29th. It is day 3 of the Maxwell Anderson trial, day 2 of testimony. He is the man charged in the homicide and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. The court is currently in a recess, their daily lunch recess. That is expected to go until 1:45 today. So we have some time to get you up to speed. If you're just checking in, we can tell you a little bit about what you have missed so far. And I'm going to talk about actually the testimony from yesterday, and then I'll recap what we've heard so far today. The very first witness in this case after opening statements were done was a civilian, that is Osiris Terrell. He is a young man who was walking along the Lake Michigan shoreline in a fairly secluded area, Warner Mountain Park. That's Osiris Terrell right there. He was walking along on a pretty nasty day, but apparently it's an area that he and his buddy go to quite a bit. I think his buddy was Evan Millies. They go there on a regular basis, he said. They've been down there several times. They're walking along and they see what they at first think is maybe part of a mannequin. They ultimately realize it is in fact a detached human leg. And if you have been following this story or this case at all since last year, you know that's when all of this really began for most of us. An unidentified human leg is found in a public park right along the Lake Michigan shoreline. And your first question is, well, whose leg is it? Where did it come from? And you start asking questions like, do we have a serial killer in Milwaukee? That's the kind of thing you read about in books and novels and see in the movies. In this case, it didn't take long before we found out who that leg was believed to belong to, because while his testimony was the first in the case, it was not the first indication that there was something awry with Sade Robinson. In fact, that happened earlier that morning. At about 7:30 in the morning, firefighters were called out to the area of 30th and Lisbon on the north side of Milwaukee to a car fire. They found a car burning behind an abandoned building. That's a still photo of it after firefighters had responded right there. Where it was parked, they said this looked immediately suspicious. They ultimately discovered there was nobody inside, but that vehicle, a 2020 dark blue Honda Civic, belonged to Sade Robinson. That was the owner. It was registered in her name. So you now have a suspicious car fire that matches to an owner that can't be found. That was at 7:30 in the morning. Well, it's around 5 o'clock that this leg is discovered in Warnemount Park, and they don't yet know anything about whose leg that is. But a few hours after that, Milwaukee Police District 5 get somebody who stops in and says, I'm concerned about my friend, my coworker. She didn't show up for work today, and the pings I'm getting from her Life 360 app, I'm not getting any response. So they go and the office, this is actually someone who testified today, Detective Nora Donegan of the Milwaukee Police Department. She was at the time Officer Nora Burlow working in District 5. She and her partner, James Terrell, actually were sent out to do a welfare check on Sade, but she tells the jury today that she already knew about this car fire that was attached, this mysterious, suspicious car fire attached to somebody named Sade Robinson at the address on Commerce Street where her apartment is located. And now they're getting a call concerned about her welfare. She's missing. And Detective Burlow, or Detective Donegan now, said she already knew about the media coverage of this leg found in the park, and she started to connect the dots. She said she got a funny feeling that this all might be connected. And as I mentioned earlier, she said something that the defense ultimately objected to, but she got it out before the objection. She said, as a woman who's dated before, I was concerned. Because you have someone who had been told by, or who I think the maintenance person at her apartment complex told police, oh yeah, she was excited. She was going out on this date. That's the last I saw of her. And then there's the car fire, and there's the leg found, and now she's missing. And the detective says she immediately became concerned that this was a single woman who'd gone out on a date and something terrible had happened. We now know that is, of course, the very theory that prosecutors are trying to prove, is that it's exactly what happened. That she went on this date with Maxwell Anderson, and ultimately he killed and dismembered her and tried to cover up his crime. The defense is saying all the state evidence is circumstantial, doesn't look great, but they can't prove that my client did this, and they have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So the first person was Osiris Terrell, who found that leg. The second person was the first police officer who came to view what had been found, because the guy who found the leg in the park does what we all should do. He called 911 right away. And it was Cudahy police officer Zach DeSmet who was the first on the scene responding to that call. We then heard from Leon Martin, a Milwaukee County Sheriff's deputy. Remember, this is a county park, so they get the sheriff's office involved, and he comes and there's body camera video along the lakeshore. You can see the conditions aren't great that day. Waves are coming in pretty high. There's a lot of wind. It's rainy. It's muddy. It's sloppy. This wasn't a place where someone like Sade Robinson was probably likely to just go for a nice stroll. It was an ugly day, but now there's this leg found along the lakeshore. The fourth witness was Joanne Donner, a Milwaukee County Sheriff's detective who talked more about the discovery of the leg. And one of the things she talked about was the condition it was found in. It looked like it had been recently deposited there. There was no signs of decomposition. She also talked about something that I've warned you about before. There's some graphic testimony. She talked about examining how the leg appeared to have been detached, that it looked like the bone had been scored. That there is Detective Joanne Donner. It looked like the bone had been scored and then snapped at the place that it was scored. Not clear what kind of a tool might have been used, but that's how she described the leg that was found. After Detective Donner, we had Francis Miller, who was the former water superintendent for Cudahy, and he talked about a gate that had been smashed on the way, that's a gate to a service road that leads down to the lakefront there at Warner Mountain Park. There's a pump house for the water department. That fence had apparently stood there for something like 30 years without anything like this happening, and on the very day that a leg is found, they find this gate has been smashed. So it appears that a vehicle smashed through it on its way to going down and someone depositing these human remains. In addition to that smashed gate, and I think Delaney's probably going to bring this up for me next, but there's a piece of a vehicle that's left behind, and there it is. It's a broken taillight from the car, which prosecutors say belongs to a 2020 Honda Civic. And you notice the shape, that sort of C shape of the light. If you've seen more modern Honda Civics, you might recognize the sort of signature shape of that light. They say that that shape very clearly applies to a particular model time period, maybe model year, and ultimately they say that there were forensics experts who determined that this belonged specifically to Sade Robinson's 2020 Honda Civic. So based on that, you now have the police and this former superintendent of the water department painting the picture that Sade Robinson's own car smashed that gate and went down to the lakefront where ultimately a part of her body was found. It is highly unlikely Sade Robinson drove through that gate herself and then ended up dismembering herself, so someone did it. But who? Was it Maxwell Anderson? Well, next up, we have a detective, Matthew Vandertye from the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, and he went over who she had been with that night before all of this happened. Of course, that was Maxwell Anderson, and that was demonstrated through text messages that they received after getting a subpoena for records of Sade Robinson's cell phone. They found text messages between her and a phone number that they would later determine belonged to Maxwell Anderson. You probably have heard about those text messages by now. That's where the two are communicating about meeting up for their date at Twisted Fisherman. Why Twisted Fisherman? Because Maxwell Anderson said, hey, I got to pick up my W-2 there, so why don't we just meet and we'll start our night out there? And that's what they do. We've got that photograph that we've shown you of the two of them sitting at the bar at Twisted Fisherman at the beginning of their date. This is a little bit after 5 o'clock, where Sade Robinson is on the right and Maxwell Anderson is on the left, and they are sitting together. That's the beginning of that date. They were together there. They were together at Duke's on Water, another bar in Milwaukee, up until about 9 o'clock that night. And after that, can't say for sure they were together based on visual sightings, but there are pings of cell phones. There are surveillance videos of what appears to be Sade Robinson's car. There is activity going on inside Maxwell Anderson's home where there's more than one person inside, things that the state is painting to say they went from the bar to Anderson's place and then went down, her car smashed through the gate, and her body parts are discarded. That is really the case the state is trying to build. The next person who testified, which was the 8th witness, was Joseph Blanchard, a Milwaukee County Sheriff's detective who had actually displayed some of the car parts that they had recovered. And then after him was probably, I would say, maybe the most emotional testimony of the first day of testimony, day 2 of the trial, and that was from Christine Schuda. She's a leasing agent at Brewers Point Apartments, and she works there and gets to know the residents, she says, very well. She knew Sade professionally, not personally, but knew her very well professionally. And as she spoke about having seen her for the last time, if she spoke about the police department coming and wanting to search her place, she was certainly having a difficult time getting some of her words out. You could hear her getting choked up as she talked about it. It was really the first person that the jury heard from who personalized this. I think, for the jurors, that they could see that this was a person who knew Sade only professionally, but liked her, cared for her, and was emotionally upset by what has happened since. We also heard from Eddie Feliciano. He's a maintenance worker at the building. He said he's been there about 2 years now, but he'd been there about 8 months before Sade's death, and he knew her. He said she was very nice. He is the one, I believe, it's not entirely clear, but I believe he is the one who told police or someone else that she had been excited to go out on this date. It was either him, might have been Christine Schuda, but someone had told police she was excited. She was looking forward to it. She's a young woman looking for love, about to go meet someone out on a date, in a good mood, and then heading out, and of course, ends in tragedy. Finally, the last person we heard from on day one was Angela Young. She was a co-worker of Sade's at Pizza Shuttle, and she is one of the first people who reported Sade missing to police when Sade did not show up for work. When you get an idea of the kind of person Sade was she somebody who showed up for work late, called in sick a lot? No, she paints the opposite picture, that not only was Sade reliable and showed up on time, if she was ever going to be late, she said she'd send me a message, she'd let me know. Or if I reached out, this is Angela's words, if I reached out and said, hey, where are you? She'd respond right away. So when Sade didn't show up for work on April 2nd, and when she wasn't responding to any of Angela's messages, Angela said she became scared and worried for her friend, and that was why she decided to go to police. That's ultimately what led to police going to do a welfare check on Sade Robinson and visiting her apartment. That was the end of yesterday's testimony. Today we started off, as I mentioned, with Detective Donegan, who talked about the welfare check they did. And then we heard from Nicholas Kropp, another Milwaukee police officer. I'm going to check my notes on what his relevance was in terms of why they talked to him. He talked about the following the pings of the vehicle travel and then how that guided a lot of the searches. You probably saw in the news a lot of video of police officers walking through, combing through areas along roadways and along railroad tracks and near rivers. A lot of these places they went to search were near public parks, and they were things that were along the trail of the vehicle pings. And he talked about why they did those extensive searches and honestly how little they found in those searches. When I go back to Detective Donegan, she talked about the apartment, what they saw inside. I don't think we have those photos to show you right now, but if we get them, maybe we can show them to you later this afternoon during another break, or we can show them to you tomorrow. But we saw pictures inside Sade's apartment today. And if you try to imagine, it's a studio apartment. There's a bed, there's, kitchen area, there's kind of a makeshift living room, but it's all in one room. And there's a closet that's got a bunch of clothes. It's not super organized. It looks like a college student. She was a college student, MATC. It's messy. But the detective said it was no messier than you would expect for someone of that age. What they found inside, well, it's not only what they found, it's what they didn't find. They went there looking to see, are there any clues? At the time, they didn't know where Sade Robinson was. Are there any clues to where she might be, or if something was wrong? They found a purse. They did find an ID inside, an ID that belonged to a minor. It was a probationary ID, meaning she'd not reached the age of 21. She was 19 at the time. They said that they were, but what they didn't find is they saw no sign of a struggle. There was no sign of a break-in. There was no sign of a fight. There was no blood evidence. There was nothing turned over or where it looked like that had been any kind of crime scene. They did find something else inside, though. And it wasn't something that I believe the prosecution wanted, and I shouldn't say I believe. I know the prosecution didn't want to talk about it, but their hand was forced based on one of the rulings of the judge. Inside a locked safe in Sade's apartment, there were 47 pills of suspected methamphetamine. It was never lab tested to prove that's what it was. It was field tested, and the a police officer who conducted that search says they believe that was, and wrote in her report that it was methamphetamine. Pills, not powder. And then there was some marijuana found in this safe as well. The safe was locked. There is no evidence that Sade Robinson had any illegal drugs in her system, but the defense also raised the point, at least with the judge outside the jury's presence, that while there wasn't any direct evidence that, or whether there wasn't anything detected in her system, it may well have been because of the manner in which she was killed and the amount of blood that was lost, that there was no way to detect that. So in other words, he's leaving open the possibility that perhaps she was taking illegal drugs. Why does that matter? And that's what the state said. What relevance does that have to any of this than to try to maybe, attack the character of the victim in this case? Well, what the defense argued to the judge was, if she purchased illegal drugs, and these drugs were indeed found in her apartment, it's in the police report, the defense argument is if she bought them, that means she probably bought them from someone who's involved in the drug trade. And what do we know about people in the drug trade? They tend to be violent people, or they have a higher propensity for violence than people who are not involved in the drug trade. The judge listened to that argument and said that she ultimately weighed did a balancing test here. There's certainly the chance that this could be prejudicial to the jury, that it paints the victim in a negative light in a way that really isn't relevant, but she ultimately determined it was relevant and admissible because of the potential theory the defense could raise, which is that someone else might have done this. Maybe she subjected herself to a crowd of people who were not so savory, who could potentially have committed violence. Whether or not the defense is going to make that case later, that was the argument they used to be able to introduce this evidence. So the state did bring it up, knowing that the defense was going to anyway, and then the jury heard about that today. We heard from a couple of friends today, including one who described herself as Sade Robinson's best friend. They talked about having Life 360, which, in case you're not familiar, is an application you can have to share location information with someone you choose. Could be a family member, could be a friend, could be anyone, but it's a way that you can keep track of someone's whereabouts, especially if you're concerned, did they make it to their destination safely? Are they home? Where are they right now? And this particular friend, two of these friends, said that they had this kind of sharing with Sade. They both became concerned when they saw that not only was she not responding to them, but that her location information last showed her with a dead battery on the phone at Warnemount Park at 4 a.m. on April 2nd. One of them said she had checked her phone maybe the next day, April 3rd, and saw that she still hadn't had an update since April 2nd, and she became concerned and talked to police. We had one witness today who was recalled, who was brought back in, and that was Joseph Blanchard, a Milwaukee County Sheriff's detective. He was called in for a second time, and in his second set of testimony, he talked about not only that welfare check, but some surveillance video that showed that Sade Robinson left her apartment at 9 o'clock in the morning on April 1st, the day she ultimately turns up missing. 9 o'clock April 1st, and looked like she was going in the direction of her job at the pizza shuttle. Later, there was video that was played that showed she was leaving Pizza Shuttle at 5 p.m. that day. So it appears she worked an 8-hour shift at Pizza Shuttle on the 1st and then left to go on her date with Maxwell Anderson. And of course, we know what the prosecution says happened after that. I'm going to take a break. It should be fairly soon that we're going to be returning to the courtroom at the Milwaukee County Courthouse. It is right now 1:43. They're expected to resume at 1:45. We'll keep you posted and get you set up for the afternoon of testimony here from the Wisconsin Live Desk. I'm Brian Polson, and we'll be back again in just a minute.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Fox 6's Brian Polson at the Wisconsin Live Desk. We are just a few minutes away from returning back to the Milwaukee County Courthouse and Judge Crivello's courtroom for the afternoon session on day 3 of the Maxwell Anderson trial. This case is being presided over by Judge Laura Crivello, the prosecutor Ian Vance Cruzan, along with Megan Newport, Deputy District Attorney Megan Newport. The defense attorneys are Tony Cotton. You may have heard that name before. He was also the attorney who represented Morgan Geyser in the Slender Man stabbing case, another high-profile case here in the Milwaukee area, and he is assisted by defense attorney Jason Findling. Of course, the defendant in the case, Maxwell Anderson, and the victim, Sade Robinson. I'm bringing this to you from the Wisconsin Live Desk, and if you've come across this and you go, I don't even know how I got here, what is the Wisconsin Live Desk? Well, what isn't it? No. What it is, of course, is an opportunity for us to bring you live things as they are happening every day here during the Maxwell Anderson trial. We're going to be here from 12:30 to 4, bringing you both updates and summaries of what's happened in the case, but also actually live testimony throughout the afternoon. And on days when we don't have a trial like this, from 12:30 to 2:30, you'll have people like Fox 6's Ben Handelman, Kim Murphy, Carl Deffenbaugh, and they'll be taking you all around Wisconsin and around the country at things that are happening right now. You don't have to wait for the news anymore. You don't have to wait for the 4 o'clock, the 5 o'clock, the 6, the 9, or the 10. We love to have you watch them. But you can get live information right here and see what's going on in our world. It's a little more casual. It's a little more raw. It's happening as it is. And that's what we're doing right here. We're just, when testimony starts up again, we're going to take you right there. If, however, you want to watch outside the hours of 12:30 to 4 and see what's going on in the Maxwell Anderson trial, Fox 6 News has you covered on that as well. You can get that on our Fox 6 News Milwaukee YouTube channel. So you go to Fox Local, you'll have that stream as well. You're always going to be able to get either the Fox 6 Milwaukee YouTube channel or Fox Local. You can see live testimony from the Maxwell Anderson trial. Some people, I know you guys are crime and courts junkies. You love every minute of this stuff. And some of you just want updates and summaries. The best time to get an update on what's happening and what's going on is probably between 12:30 and 1:45 each day, because I'm going to be here breaking down what has happened so far. You may not want to sit through the minutia of every one of these witnesses. You want to know what happened, but you want to hear more than a soundbite. That you can get right here, because I'm going to give you more in-depth analysis of that. Of course, every week we also have Fox 6's Open Record, which is our podcast, our award-winning podcast, where we are going to have an expert on to join us each week of this trial, and that is Julius Kim of Kim & Lavoie, criminal defense attorney and former state prosecutor. We'll have him to give us a breakdown, what he sees going on in the case, where he sees each side succeeding, maybe some holes in what they're trying to present, and how the jury might be viewing what is happening. And if you look here at the bottom of your screen, you see my name. You also see an email address, fox6investigators@fox.com. Make note of that, because if you have any questions for us, if you have comments, if you have feedback, reach out to me right there, and I'll try to get you answers. Or if it's something, a suggestion you have, we'll listen to your comments. If it's just feedback, if you want to tell us we're doing a great job, or you want to tell us I'm rambling and saying way too much, I'm totally cool with it. My mom always told me I talk too much, but that's my job, right? But anyway, we'd love to get your feedback, fox6investigators@fox.com. I'm keeping an eye out on my sort of left corner of my eye here as we're watching the courthouse. We're still seeing the image of the eagle on the top of the American flag in the courtroom. That's where the camera operator has to focus when the court is not on the record. So once they zoom back out, and I know I've got Delaney Reed, producer, in my ear, who's going to be telling me if she hears the audio come back on, that we know they are about to come back in the courtroom. They will open back up here in a few minutes. Yesterday it was right around this time, right around 1:49 and 1:50. And they will probably go until 4:45 or 5 o'clock before they break. I would imagine, based on the pace of what we saw this morning, we're maybe going to see another 7, 8, 9 witnesses from the state this afternoon. We've already heard from 20. How many will they ultimately call? It's hard to say. They have potentially hundreds of witnesses on the list. Will they actually call hundreds? I doubt it. But will they call several dozen? Absolutely. Just how many, I guess, remains to be seen. We do know this. The judge has said that she expects this case to last a couple of weeks, and there are some indications that could be a minimum. It could maybe even go longer than that. Remains to be seen, but right now it's just day 3. So no matter what it is, we know we have a long day to go. If you just came across this, you just stumbled across this feed and you don't really know what's happening, like I said, I'm going to try to keep bringing you up to date. We are covering today, tomorrow, all through the rest of this trial. Between 12:30 and 4, right here from the Wisconsin Live Desk, we're going to be bringing you analysis, summaries, recaps, and of course, live testimony as it happens from the trial of Maxwell Anderson, who was charged in the death of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. We know that from the reporters who've been in the courtroom, Bill Miston, there every day from gavel to gavel, people like Aaron Maben and others, that there is a packed house inside the courtroom. There are a few rows of members of the local news media, but there are also rows of family members for Sade Robinson, family members of Maxwell Anderson, and community members there to support whether it's supporting the victim, in this case, Sade Robinson, or I'm not sure if there are community members who are also present supporting Maxwell Anderson. We know the Robinson supporters have certainly been more high profile and more vocal. It looks like we do have the judge back on the bench, so we are going to take you out to the Milwaukee County Courthouse in the courtroom of Judge Laura Crivello. Oh, that's the wrong place, but let me send you here. No? Well, she was there for a moment. Delana, did you hear what might have been said? Okay, she's calling. They're probably going to wait for the jury to come back in before they come back off that flagpole shot. So I'll keep it here just another moment or so. But when I'm going to bring up the audio, at least in the background. Okay. Okay, so Maxwell Anderson is back in the courtroom. They're waiting for the jury to come back in the courtroom. As soon as the jury is back, we will send you there. Okay. Bill Miston, our reporter on the scene, tells us the jury is heading back into the courtroom. So we are moments away from the resumption of testimony in the Maxwell Anderson trial. And again, throughout the afternoon up until 4 o'clock, you can watch that right here on this stream. At 4 o'clock, we'll switch over to Fox 6 News at 4. After that, as testimony continues, you can watch this, of course, on the Fox 6 News Milwaukee YouTube channel if you want to keep watching the actual testimony. If you want to see our news coverage of that, you can see that on Fox 6 News at 4 right here on this stream. So again, just keeping an eye as they're not quite off that flagpole shot just yet.
Same appearances.
I hear voices.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
I think we are back, so we're going to send you out there now.
We are still on the state's case in chief. State, are you prepared with your next witness?
Yes, the state calls Officer Derek Kolb.
Swear that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You can please be seated, state and spell your name for the record.
All right, I'm Officer Derek Kolb, D-E-R-E-K, K-O-L-B.
You a police officer with the City of Milwaukee Police Department?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been an officer?
Since August of 2023.
What district are you assigned to currently?
District 3.
Have you always been assigned to District 3?
Since the start of field training, yes.
What would be the geographical area that encompasses District 3?
It starts from the most northern part of Center Street, goes down to about St. Paul, Canal Street, and then various streets out west to about 106 to about 7th Street.
And you work patrol?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe your general daily duties?
Generally, we'll be patrolling around, taking calls for service, doing traffic stops, anything that dispatchers dispatch to, on a daily basis, so any sort of calls that we need on the day.
The calls for service come from a dispatch center from the city, right?
Yes, sir.
Were you working on the morning of April 2nd, 2024?
Yes, sir.
Were you alone or did you have a partner?
I was with a partner that day.
What was your shift?
I was assigned to day shift, which is 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Shortly after your shift began on April 2nd, 2024, were you and your partner dispatched to 2928 West Lisbon Avenue in the city and county of Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
Yes, I was.
What was the nature of the call that you received?
We initially get a call for service from Milwaukee Fire calling us for a request MPD. Usually that results in us being told that we need to investigate a fire of some sorts.
Did you know what kind of fire this entailed when you were going there?
Yes, initially our CAD notes read that it was a vehicle fire.
Are you familiar with what's at the address of 2928 West Lisbon Avenue?
Yes, when I started there, it was an abandoned building and it continued to be until it was torn down.
Do you remember about when it was torn down?
It was approximately about 6 to 7 months ago, roughly.
Okay, after April 2nd, 2024.
Yes, sir.
Your partner that day was who?
His name is Miles Kowalik.
Mileskowalik for the record. When you were dispatched to that location and arrived in that location, were you and Officer Kowalik already there, or had the fire department already been there?
Milwaukee Fire Department had already been there and extinguished the fire prior to our arrival.
Did you speak to a member of the fire department?
Yes, I did.
Who?
I do not recall his specific name.
Okay. Was he the captain that was on scene?
Captain Hoos was his name.
Hoos?
Yes.
Thank you. That conversation, I presume you just got basic information about what they encountered when they got there?
Yes.
Do you recall what that information was?
Essentially, we run down if the fire was suspicious or not suspicious, what essentially they first got there, what they observed, and essentially we just get a debrief of the situation before we do our investigation regarding the fire.
And what did they observe?
When they got there, they observed a blue Honda Civic engulfed in flames, which prior to our arrival, they put out before we got there.
Was there anything notable about the trunk that they had noticed when they got there?
When they got there, I do not recall, but when I arrived on scene, the trunk was ajar.
Was there any noticeable damage to any part of the vehicle that did not look to be from a fire?
Not to my knowledge, no.
You had a body camera, correct?
Yes, it was equipped and activated during this investigation.
And you also made contact with an individual who had called 911, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
She, at the time, was a resident of a house on North 29th Street, correct?
Yes, sir, just east of the location of where the vehicle was set on fire.
Do you recall what address?
I do not recall.
I'm going to show you Exhibit 190. What is this?
That is a aerial view of District 3, certain parts of streets being Galena to Lisbon Avenue.
Move 190 in and ask to publish.
Any objection?
No.
It's received and go ahead.
I've got Exhibit 190 on the TV screen now. Officer, at the top of the screen, there's an angled street, is that right?
Correct.
What street is that?
The angle street that runs west to east is called West Lisbon Avenue.
The street that runs north to south on the far left side, that's North 32nd Street.
Yes, sir.
And the map depicts as far east as North 29th Street, almost to North 28th Street. Fair enough?
Yes, sir.
Is the location where you found, or where you went to find this car on this map?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, would you allow the witness to point out where the car was?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so you're pointing to the building basically at the northeast corner of 30th and Lisbon.
Yes, sir. Just east of 30th.
All right, and that building that's in this map, that is no longer there.
No, it is not.
And Was the car on the Lisbon side or the other side?
It would have been north of Lisbon Avenue, just east of 30th.
Behind the building at this corner?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you go down 30th, this street here is what?
That would be Walnut.
This is Walnut Street, and then the one south of that is
West Galena.
West Galena. And then right in between Walnut and Galena is the 31st and Galena Playground?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You can have a seat. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 51. Should come up on the screen momentarily. What are we looking at?
That was the blue Honda Civic that we got dispatched to for the vehicle fire.
I should have asked a better question. This is a body cam, right?
Yes,
Okay, whose body cam?
that would be my personal body camera.
Where I have this Exhibit 51 queued up, you're looking at the Honda Civic, right? And the street that would be beyond that building is what?
That would be West Lisbon Avenue.
So you're essentially facing south.
Yes, sir.
Is this your body cam from when you were there that day?
Yes, sir.
I'd move Exhibit 51 in and ask to publish about 2.5 minutes of it.
No objection.
It's received and go ahead.
Sorry, 3.5. When I start playing this video, there's not going to be audio, correct?
No.
Why is that?
For the first 30 seconds, when we turn on our Axon body cameras, it goes back about approximately 30 seconds to where no audio is recorded during it, just how our Axon-equipped cameras are run in our Milwaukee Police Department.
You hit record, but your camera actually picks up 30 seconds prior.
Exactly.
All right, thanks. Paused at 110. That first portion of the video, what were you doing?
Essentially looking over the vehicle, just seeing what kind of fire damage is done to the vehicle. And then initially when I looked at the front plane of glass for the front window, that's initially where I first checked vehicles for their VIN number. And then the second time when I went to the inside of the door panel is where I checked for the the VIN number. The first one was destroyed in the vehicle fire, so I got the VIN number off of the door.
The purpose of getting that information is what?
Typically, and sometimes with the Milwaukee Police Department, some vehicles have license plates that do not match the vehicle that it has on it. So I always double check and write down the VIN number of the vehicle and the license plate as well, just to make sure that they match if I run the license plate or if I run the VIN.
You did that in this instance?
Yes, sir.
And then did you run that information to try to figure out who the vehicle belonged to?
I did.
And who did the vehicle belong to?
We run it through a certification called E-Time, which is a Department of Transportation check. And when I ran the license plate and the VIN of this motor vehicle, it listed to Sade Robinson.
Did the VIN and the license plate match?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Playing at 110. Paused at 152. The last few seconds here, you seem to be checking the engine compartment, fair?
Yes.
And on the left side of the screen where my mouse is circling here would be the front passenger rear view mirror, correct?
Yes.
And the condition of it right now at this point is what?
It's damaged.
Hanging down?
Yes.
Playing at 152. Paused at 225. The front hood of the car, there's a cut straight across, correct?
Yes.
The hood is cut open.
Yes.
Okay. Is that something the fire department does?
Yes.
Playing at 225.
Super weird because that engine still looks like it's in pristine condition. Huh? It didn't even look like, I mean that in the sense of like the fire didn't even touch the engine or any part of the front of the vehicle. Oh, it was only interior.
Paused at 318. At this point in the video, you're looking into the trunk.
Yes.
This item that I'm pointing out with my mouse here looks like what?
Like a bag of some sorts?
This black item here?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is the first time either of you had looked into the trunk, fair?
Initially, I was the only officer between us two that had looked over the vehicle, looked and inspected it, and just made sure that everything was inside the vehicle or if any personal identifiers were in it.
Understood. Playing at 318. Paused it at 332. That last clip of you standing at the driver's side of the vehicle, how would you describe the interior of the vehicle?
Completely destroyed, essentially set on fire, complete fire damage of the interior of the vehicle.
The frame that I have on the screen right now from your body cam, it looks like there's a lot of trash. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you know this location? Is that abnormal for behind this building?
Not at all.
Okay. Is this building, as it was abandoned at the time, was it kind of a dumping ground?
It could be used as a dumping ground, yes.
And where your squad is parked here, that's the alley. That's not a street, right?
That is an alleyway.
This street over here to the left, that would be North 30th Street then.
Yes, it would be.
So to get here, you pulled into this alleyway right off of North 30th.
Yes.
The 911 caller, did you make contact with that person?
I did.
Did they indicate whether...
Objection here.
That was
I was
somewhat
going
of
to make a hearsay objection, but he stopped his question.
Okay.
Did you talk to the 911 caller?
I did.
Did you canvass the neighborhood?
I did.
And did you look for video cameras from houses or anywhere that might depict the area behind that abandoned building?
Anywhere in the immediate area that could have potentially caught this vehicle driving into the alleyway or behind the abandoned house.
That's what you were looking for?
Yep.
Were you able to find anybody when you were on scene here from those houses who had seen what happened?
My immediate canvas, not a single individual saw what happened, and nor did I find any camera footage around that immediate area north of it.
Okay, so you say north of it, you're looking, you mean north of Lisbon, fair?
Yes.
And are you aware of any camera footage that captures right behind that abandoned building at the time?
Not at that moment, no.
After you arrived, did you have other members of your department come out to tow the vehicle from that location?
I do not recall if we had another squad or if it was us that waited for the tow to arrive on scene.
So there was a tow that arrived on scene, fair?
Eventually, yes, that vehicle was towed from that location.
Where do you, what's the process for that? Where does it get towed to?
We call the city tow lot, and then essentially we wait for a tow to arrive. We get a tow number that's associated with the vehicle, and then if it's a safekeeping tow, it'll be kept at the city tow lot in a specific lot separate from evidence tows.
Did you at some point become aware on April 2nd of a leg that was found at Warnemont Park?
Yes.
Did you become aware that day or at a subsequent time?
Subsequent time.
Okay. And you're aware that that leg was found on the evening of April 2nd?
I do not recall what time that was recovered.
But this time, the time you went out to this burning car, I think it's on your body cam up here at the upper right, we're at 8:22 a.m., is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I have no other questions. Thank you.
Cross?
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, officer. So you testified that you were dispatched to this 2928 West Lisbon Avenue for a vehicle fire, correct?
Yes.
And had you ever been dispatched to vehicle fires in that area before?
No.
Okay, so, but this area that you described, you said that there's a lot of trash around there, correct?
Yes, there is.
And I mean, I guess we can kind of look at the video here on this frame. It looks like there's some residential homes, correct?
Just north of it, yes.
Are you familiar with this area through your, responding to calls for service?
Yes.
And I mean, have you responded to calls for service about potential drug dealing?
Objection, relevance?
What's the relevance?
I'm just trying to set the scene of where this all occurred. The part of the city. I mean, they stayed on direct examination, just talking about how it's a high crime area.
I don't recall that happening.
Or the trash, I suppose. I mean, if I can just move on.
Okay,
Littering's
please
a
move
crime.
on. I'm going to sustain the objection. Move on.
All right, but when you arrived after the fire had already been extinguished, correct?
Yes.
And you had mentioned that the trunk of the vehicle was ajar, right?
Yes, it was.
And it was in that condition when you arrived.
Can you rephrase that?
The trunk was ajar when you arrived, correct?
Yes.
And I guess we saw on body camera, it shows that you approaching the car, and it looks like you're writing down the VIN number?
That's what I initially did, yes.
Okay. And did you touch the vehicle whatsoever? Did you touch anything in the interior or in the trunk?
Nothing in the interior, nothing in the interior of the trunk, and nothing from the exterior. When I opened the trunk, I do not recall if I put my direct hand on it or if I used my sleeve.
Okay. And you indicated that there was minor damage to the exterior of the vehicle, correct?
Yes, I did.
But it didn't appear that there was any fire damage on the exterior of the vehicle. It looks like it was more just interior, correct?
I knew there was interior damage. I do not know the extent of the exterior of it, if it was fire damage or if it was damage done prior to the vehicle being there.
What I meant was the exterior of the vehicle, there wasn't char marks on the exterior.
I do not recall if there was or not.
It appears that the fire damage is all the interior front seat and into the back seat, correct?
There was fire damage in the interior and the rear and the trunk.
And the trunk, but we could see on the body camera that there was still some belongings that didn't look like they were charred or burned.
No.
And after you are looking at this vehicle, you said you canvassed the area, correct?
I did.
And what did that entail? Did you go to homes around the area?
Any houses around the area that could have potentially caught this incident on a camera or any sort of video footage?
And you weren't able to locate any video footage that captured the fire?
No.
And so you weren't able to identify any suspects that were captured on video, correct?
Nothing on the canvas that I conducted that day.
I have nothing further.
State.
Nothing else.
Thank you, officer.
Thank you.
State.
State calls Detective Alexis Krusek.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you could please be seated, state and spell your name for the record.
Alexis, A-L-E-X-I-S, Krusek, K-R-U-S-I-C,
How are you employed?
with the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office.
What's your position there?
Detective,
How long have you been a detective?
over 9 years.
Prior to that, what was your rank?
Patrol deputy,
Are you assigned to any specific position within the Sheriff's Department?
I am a federally deputized task force officer with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and I'm on the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office bomb squad as a bomb technician.
What does it mean to be a TFO with the ATF?
I assist with federal cases ranging between firearms trafficking and arson cases.
And you have federal jurisdictions as well, correct?
Yes,
How long have you been on that assignment?
since March of 2020.
So you were working in that capacity in April of 2024?
Yes,
Did you come into contact with a 2020 blue Honda Civic in April of 2024?
yes, April 5th.
April 5th? In what capacity?
It was originally involved in a fire, now determined to be an arson. It was towed back to the Milwaukee Police Department tow lot, the City of Milwaukee tow lot, pending processing.
Was there a license plate associated with that
There
car?
was.
What was that?
It was Wisconsin Adam Sam Paul 1711, I believe it is.
Would 1171 sound familiar?
1171.
Are you aware of who that vehicle registered to?
It listed to Sade Robinson.
At that point, you were aware that Sade Robinson was deceased, correct?
I believe at that time it was still a missing person.
Okay. Who were you with at the tow lot as it relates to your investigation surrounding this vehicle?
Milwaukee Police Department personnel, I believe it was Detective Amy Stolowski, ATF Certified Fire Investigator Ricky Hankins, and Milwaukee Police Department Bomb Technician Commander Adam Islub.
And what was your purpose in being there?
Assisting with the search of the vehicle.
I missed the last name. The bomb tech, Adam.
Islub.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, the crime lab was also present, 2 individuals,
What was the crime lab there for?
to assist with evidence collection.
Such as?
Collecting
what?
DNA swabs, they collected the items out of the vehicle, packaged them, and then they were turned over to me at the end of the day.
And you watched that happen?
Yes.
Did you observe the Honda Civic in its initial state at the tow lot before any searching began?
Yes.
And prior to your search of the car, and when I'm saying your search, I mean you and the other personnel that were there that day, did you have any information about whether or not someone else had searched the car on an earlier date?
No.
So you were the first search of this vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe the vehicle as you initially observed it?
It had heavy fire damage to it in all areas. The trunk was still pretty intact as far as vehicle condition.
Were you able to readily identify anything in the vehicle?
There was a blanket that could be seen on the back seat, as well as a brown and black purse that was on the floor behind the front driver's seat.
That's as to the passenger compartment. Would you say that the passenger compartment was the part that sustained the heaviest fire damage?
Yes.
What about the hood and engine area?
The hood had been cut, most likely by the fire department.
Can you describe the trunk?
The trunk was still in pretty pristine condition. There was a lot of standing water still, though, in the trunk of the vehicle.
Were you able to locate any items that were ultimately collected and placed on inventory from the trunk?
From the trunk, there was a black puffy style jacket. There were light ripped jeans, like light wash ripped jeans, white tennis shoes, and tan underwear.
The underwear, was that contained on or within something?
It was on the outside of the light wash jeans.
The bag or purse that you described, was that also recovered?
It was, but not in the trunk.
Did you find any keys?
No.
Did you find any cell phones?
We found remnants of the phone camera, the steel that's on the back of an iPhone that shows the 3 circles for your camera. We were able to locate that in melted debris via X-ray.
Sorry, can you repeat the last portion of what you said?
It was located in melted debris inside of the vehicle that we were able to locate by using an X-ray system.
Thank you. Did you find any weapons?
No.
Would weapons, in theory, be detected through an X-ray system?
Yes.
Were photographs taken?
They were.
I'm not going to object to the introduction of any of these photos. It's all car photos.
Thank you. I'm showing you what's been marked exhibits 58 through 89. If you could just look through those and let me know what they are.
One at a time?
If you can just collectively look at them, identify them, and then we'll go through them one by one.
These are photos that I took during the vehicle processing.
I'd ask that exhibits 58 through 89.
They are received, and you may publish.
Showing you exhibit 58. What is that?
That is the front of the 2020 Honda Civic.
Okay, and again, this is at the tow lot, correct?
It is.
Exhibit 59.
It's the passenger side view of the Honda Civic.
Can you see fire damage to the exterior of this car?
You can.
Can you describe where?
On the front, or on the top portion of the vehicle doors.
Exhibit number 60, what is that?
The passenger rear corner overall of the Honda Civic.
Exhibit 61.
It's a front driver's side corner overall view of the Honda Civic.
Did it appear to you that there was at least some sort of front end damage to that vehicle?
Yes.
Exhibit 62, what's that?
That is an overall view of the driver's side rear back seat, showing the fleece blanket.
Okay, so the green and blue item here, this is a blanket.
Yes.
What is the yellow material there?
I believe that's part of the seat cushion.
Exhibit number 63.
It's an overall of the trunk view.
And I'm just going to have you step down off the stand and approach that. And if you could show us where, you said there was a jacket that was recovered, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And that was a black
puffy winter jacket.
What else can you see in that photo that you recovered?
Can you bring the microphone as far over as you can as well? Thank you.
I believe the jeans were underneath the jacket in this.
Okay. What about Exhibit 64? Can you describe what's depicted in that photo?
The winter jacket.
Can you point to that? What else is, just in general, if you can recall, what else was in there? There are lots of things in that photo.
There's a shovel here. That was in the trunk of the vehicle.
What about that item that I'm pointing to here? What does that appear to be?
A windshield wiper.
Actually, what about this item here?
Oh, that is a bed sheet.
And did you recover that?
I did.
How about Exhibit 65?
I believe this is a photo behind the front driver's seat, and the purse was in the lower area here.
Showing you Exhibit 66. What is that?
It's a black and brown purse that was located behind the front driver's seat on the floor.
Were there items that were contained in that purse that you were able to recover?
Yes.
Such as?
There was a laptop, an iPad, and some miscellaneous items. I believe there's another photo.
Showing you Exhibit number 67.
Yeah, those were some of the contents from inside of the bag.
Exhibit 68.
Additional items from inside of the bag.
Do you know what these items are?
I believe there's going to be another photo. This is paperwork with Sade Robinson's name on it.
Showing you Exhibit 69. Is that the paperwork?
It's a closer view, yes.
Exhibit number 70.
This was an apron that was located inside of the trunk with Sade's name tag on it from the Wisconsin Club.
It looks like there's some cash, like loose bills of U.S. currency.
Yes.
But Exhibit 71.
These were all of the items from that purse, all laid out.
Okay. Can you describe some of the other items there?
Let's see. So there's 2 notebooks, a comb, there's 2 photos, Polaroid photos, miscellaneous paperwork, a planner over here, and a phone charging block.
Looks like some pencils and markers too.
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked Exhibit number 72. What is that?
That is an overall of the front driver's seat.
Exhibit 73.
This is a measurement that we took from the gas pedal of the vehicle to the front seat of the driver's seat.
Okay, and why did you do that?
To show the distance, because it seemed awfully far for an individual of her stature.
Okay, so at this point you were familiar with who Sade Robinson was, correct?
Yes.
Including some of her demographic information,
yes,
such as height. Were you familiar with what she looked like?
Not before the search, no.
Okay. Showing you exhibit number 74. What is that?
These are clothing items that were recovered from the trunk of the vehicle.
Okay, describe what we're looking at here.
There's a black, that outer winter puffy style jacket, light ripped jeans, tan underwear, and 2 pair of white tennis shoes.
The one tennis shoe is burned.
Yes.
The jeans and underwear, were they like that when you recovered them?
Yes.
So you did not place them like that?
No.
Is there anything upon looking at that strikes you as unusual?
I think looking at how these were recovered, it could be consistent with somebody assisting in the removal.
How about exhibit number 75?
Those are a close-up of the white tennis shoes that were recovered from the trunk.
Exhibit 76?
A closer image of the light wash jeans and the underwear.
77?
A closer image of the black winter style jacket.
What is 78?
This is an overall of the interior components that were removed from the car.
From what part of the car?
All of the interior of the car.
So not the trunk, the passenger compartment?
Yes.
And was one of those items depicted in exhibit 79?
Yes, this was recovered in melted debris that we had to pry out of.
Okay, and what is that?
We believe that is the rear part of a phone where your camera is. It's the 3 camera spots on iPhones. Consistent with an iPhone 15.
And you're familiar with that?
Yes.
But exhibit number 80?
That is an overall of the front passenger compartment.
And I should ask, that's the only part of a phone that you recovered in the car that was identifiable as something on a phone?
Correct.
Exhibit number 81?
So this is an item that is a stuffed animal of some sort that had an odor of gasoline on it. That was on the floorboard on the passenger side of the vehicle.
And you recovered that item?
Yes.
Why?
Because it had an odor of gasoline.
Exhibit number 82?
That is an overall of the front damage on the Honda Civic.
And that doesn't appear to be fire damage, does it?
No.
Exhibit number 83?
Another overall of the damage on the front passenger quarter panel of the vehicle.
Exhibit 84?
That's a close-up of the driver's side quarter panel showing the damage on the Honda Civic.
Exhibit number 85?
That is passenger side damage to the mirror, a close-up.
Exhibit number 86?
This is another image of the measurement that we took.
So driver's side again?
Driver's side seat, yep.
Are you aware of whether or not other measurements were also taken at a later time?
Yes, there was. Not by me, but there were.
Exhibit number 87?
Close-up of the measurement.
And what was the measurement, if you know?
I do not recall off the top of my head.
Exhibit 88?
And this was the measurement from the brake pedal to the front driver's seat.
And are you able to say what that was? Are you able to see?
I don't know if that's 19 inches, but.
And exhibit number 89?
Okay, it shows 1 feet, 20 inches for the measurement.
You can have a seat. At some point during your investigation, your portion of this investigation, the car search, were you made aware of what Sade Robinson was last seen wearing?
Yes, once I recovered the clothing, I had reached out to see what she was last seen wearing.
And what did you receive in response?
I received a still image of Sade. She was walking on a boardwalk by herself, and she was wearing light wash, ripped jeans, white tennis shoes, and a black jacket, from what I could see.
I'm showing you what's been marked Exhibit 240. You can identify what that is.
This is the image that I was sent.
I'd ask that 240 be received in public.
Any objection?
No.
240 is received. Go ahead.
Do the jeans that Sade is wearing in that photograph appear to be the jeans that you recovered?
They do.
And what about the coat?
Also appears to be the same.
And what about her shoes?
They appear to be the same.
And what about the bag?
From what you can see in the photo, it resembles a dark style bag, but yes.
Did you recover any white tops, shirts, or sweaters?
No.
The DNA, the crime lab individuals who were taking DNA swabs, did you see them taking swabs of areas like the door handles?
Yes, they did.
Okay. All right. The items that you described that we've seen photos of, those were placed on inventory, correct?
They were.
And inventory is what? Just
property with the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office.
showing you what's been showing you what's been marked exhibit number 52. Can you identify what this is?
This is the stuffed animal that had the odor of the accelerant from the front passenger floorboard of the Honda Civic.
So that's what's contained in that bag, correct?
Yes.
Is it contained in something?
A paint can.
Okay. What condition is that in?
It had been to the crime lab already.
Okay. I'm asking that exhibit 52 be received.
Any objection?
No.
It's received.
Showing you what's been marked exhibit number 57. What is that?
This is the brown and black purse, partially burned from the rear driver's side floorboard.
And that's already been opened, correct?
It has.
You opened that earlier today.
I did.
Can you pull out what's in it?
This is the purse that was recovered.
I'd ask that exhibit 57 be received.
Any objection?
No.
57 is received.
Showing you exhibit number 54. What is that?
These are the light wash ripped jeans with the tan underwear that were recovered from the trunk.
I'd ask that exhibit 54 be received.
Any objection?
No.
It's received.
And I'd ask you to just take out the jeans. Thank you. Showing you what's been marked exhibit number 53. What is that?
This is the black puffy jacket from the trunk of the Honda Civic.
And could you open that up and show us what it contains? Thank you. Showing you Exhibit 55. What is that?
These are the white Bob sneakers with burn damage recovered from the trunk.
Could you open that and take the shoes out for us?
Yes.
Do you want scissors?
Probably.
Thanks, Liz.
Did I move in Exhibit number 55?
No.
Okay,
No.
move in Exhibit 55.
Any objection?
No,
It's received 53 too.
I'd move in Exhibit 53.
I don't object to that either.
You're not objecting?
No.
It's received as well.
Showing you what's been marked Exhibit 56. What is that?
This is the white-ish yellow bed sheet, partially burned, that was recovered from the trunk.
I did ask for Exhibit 56 to be received.
I don't object.
It's received.
And could you open that, please?
Got it all the way open?
No, that's okay. That was found in the trunk. You showed us where it was, right?
It was.
Okay, thank you. You testified that you didn't find any sort of top, a shirt or a sweater. Did you find a bra?
No.
Are you aware of whether or not the DNA swabs that you testified the crime lab was taking, that those were ultimately taken to the crime lab?
They were, but not by me.
I don't have anything further.
Cross?
So you were involved in other things in this case, but primarily a search of the car, right?
Correct.
And and this looks like a pretty thorough search, you were going through the trunk and the main area of the vehicle, right?
Yes.
Were there any identifiers for Maxwell Anderson in that car?
No.
Any ID cards or anything like that?
No.
There was obviously some clothing in the trunk area that you've testified to that belonged to Miss Robinson, obviously, right?
Correct.
And some measurements were done, you were present for that?
Yes.
Now, did you go to the scene of, excuse me, were you present at the scene of the burning car or no?
No.
Your investigation was done once the car had been towed back to a lot, right?
Correct.
Or maybe a building that you use.
Yes.
And do you know whether the fire department, well, by the time you got the vehicle, the fire department had already been in the car and hosed it down and opened the doors and things like that, right?
I can't speak to what they've done, but there was clear water inside the vehicle.
I mean, clearly they had put out the fire and cut open the hood and things like
Yes.
that, right? And in terms of the seat distance from how far forward or how far back it is, do you know whether the fire department moved it forward or backward as they're putting out the fire?
No, I'm not sure.
All you know is those measurements are what they are for when you have the vehicle at the lot, right?
Yes.
DNA swabs were done really throughout the vehicle, isn't that fair to say?
I
On
believe
various-
it was just the exterior.
The exterior driver's front door handle, right?
Yes.
So meaning that door handle that a driver would use to get in or out of the car was swabbed extensively.
Yes.
And exterior driver rear door handle, that was also swabbed.
Yes.
Trunk latch.
Yes.
What's a trunk latch?
How you open up the trunk of a vehicle.
Okay, so for this particular vehicle, is there a button in the back of the trunk that you would have pushed and it would have opened?
I don't recall.
Okay, it's something that a person would have to touch to open up the trunk though,
Yes.
and that was swabbed.
Yes.
And exterior passenger rear door handle,
That was done.
exterior passenger front door handle.
Yes.
So all of those things are swabbed for DNA, correct?
Yes.
And I think you just said you didn't send any of it to the lab for testing. That was somebody else's responsibility.
Correct.
You said the stuffed animal that we've talked about had an odor of gasoline on it.
Yes.
Are you a bomb technician?
I am.
Okay. What's a bomb technician?
I respond to calls of suspicious items. I respond if there's any potential for a device, anything having to do with military ordnance.
Got it. And so when you say gasoline, you're using that phrase. Are you using that in just the ordinary smell of gasoline is what you mean, right? Like anybody would smell at a gas station is what you were smelling, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's all.
State, were things still wet inside the car?
Yes, things had to be taken out of their original packaging and hung up to dry.
Nothing further.
Defense?
No.
Thank you. Anybody need a break at this time? No? Okay. Next witness, state.
Special Agent Ricky Hankins.
Yeah.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you could please be seated, state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Ricky Hankins, Hankins.
How are you employed, sir?
I am a special agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, also known as ATF.
How long have you worked in law enforcement?
I have worked for ATF since April 2001.
And what is your, are you a certified fire investigator?
I am.
What is that?
A certified fire investigator means that I have received specialized training in order to investigate fire origin and cause.
Can you just summarize what that is, the training?
The training for ATF was a 2-year immersion program where I had to take graduate courses from the University of Maryland, I had to investigate a minimum of 100 fire scenes under the mentorship of more senior ATF CFIs. I had to do a research project. I had to do reading reports. At the end of it, I had to take written tests. And I'm also an International Association of Arson Investigators, CFI, through their process as well.
How long have you been a CFI?
I have been an ATF CFI since 2009.
Back on or about April 5th, 2024, were you asked to assist in the search and processing of a 2020 Honda Civic?
Correct.
Where did that occur?
That occurred at 3811 West Lincoln, the secure impound lot for the Milwaukee Police Department.
Among the people present for that was yourself as well as Detective Alexis Krusik, who just left this room, correct?
That is right.
And then there were additional personnel present from the Milwaukee Police Department as well as the Wisconsin State Crime Lab. Is that correct?
That is correct.
After doing that search, were you tasked with conducting an origin and cause determination?
I was.
What is the purpose of an origin and cause determination?
An origin and cause investigation starts with determining where a fire starts. The purpose of an origin and cause investigation is to determine where a fire starts and how it started, to determine if it's an accident, if possible, or an intentional act. Sometimes we can't tell the difference and we have to leave a fire undetermined.
In this case, after you conducted that search with those other people, were you able to come to a conclusion as to origin and cause of this fire?
Yes.
Can you tell us basically the process? Take us through it.
In order to get to the final conclusion, the first thing we look at is origin. And to put it simply, when you're looking for the origin of the fire, we're looking at materials or locations that do not look like their immediate surroundings. So mass loss is different, so things are just burned away, and there's not as much left of an area as its immediate surroundings. So there's mass loss, there's discoloration, all right? There's deposit, there's deformation, melting, warping. When we see areas like that, we explore those areas as potential areas of origin, keeping in mind that the greatest area of fire damage or greatest area of mass loss doesn't always mean origin. Sometimes that mass loss is caused by ventilation. So if ventilation comes in an area, that can cause more mass loss. So we explore first origin. Once we're comfortable with where a fire starts, then we look for what are the first fuels, what's capable of burning in that area, and what are our heat sources. Are there any accidental potential heat sources that could have come in contact with our fuel load? Are they capable of igniting what's in that area? Once we explore that and we test that with prior knowledge, sometimes we have to do fire research testing at our lab out in Maryland. We have a large warehouse that sometimes we have to rebuild complete structures and test fire to see which of our hypothesis might be correct. If we are able to come to a hypothesis that withstands all scrutiny and only one hypothesis remains, then we draw a conclusion.
Does this involve an assessment of the exterior damage as well as to the interior damage of the vehicle?
That's correct.
Can you tell us what you noticed when you did an exterior assessment?
Of the 2020 Honda Civic, there was oxidation to the sunroof area, and there was also oxidation to the exterior passenger side doors.
What is that?
Oxidation is discoloration. So one of those things I was telling you that we're looking for is the discoloration. So there's a whitening or a peeling of the exterior paint from those doors.
I'm going to put on the screen here for you Exhibit 60. It doesn't matter what speed you're talking about this discoloration right around here?
That is correct.
Let's talk about the interior damage assessment. What did you observe?
When we were looking at the interior of the Honda Civic, we looked first at the engine compartment and then we looked at the trunk. The interior of those compartments, the engine compartment, there was no indication of direct flame damage. There was no fire damage indicating that the fire started in the engine compartment. Same with the trunk. There was a little bit of mass loss or flame damage to contents of the trunk that were immediately adjacent to the back seat. Well, that's because the back seat had burned away from a fire from the passenger compartment, had extended a limited extension into the trunk.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Looking at the passenger compartment, so the front seats, the back seats, we had heavy mass loss to contents as well as the seating, both the backrests, and there's more survivability to the seat cushion, but the backrests for the two front bucket seats and the backrests for the rear seat were uniformly consumed. And so it was very clear that the fire had originated inside the passenger compartment.
All right, and for the record, while you were talking, I put up Exhibit 62, which has already been admitted. That would be an image of the interior compartment, correct?
Correct.
What can you tell us about the windows?
When I examined the windows, I had a lot of window remnants deep inside the window wells, indicative of the windows being at least partially open during the fire event.
Let's talk about excavation. What happened? What did you notice through that?
So like I said before, when we determined origin, and that being the passenger compartment, we started excavating, looking for what are our fuel loads. The back seat, I remember seeing a fleece blanket, which I believe we see here in this photograph. There were remnants of cardboard, remnants of paper material. I do recall, I believe, a purse in the back seat. There was also remnants of a Bic lighter, I recall seeing in the back seat. And as we excavated further now into the front of the passenger compartment, I reached the area of the floorboard on the front passenger side. So front passenger bucket seat, right at foot level. During excavation, I located what appeared to be remnants of a stuffed animal, green in color, at least majority of it green that had survived. And as soon as I turned it over, I was overwhelmed by an odor consistent with the possible presence of a petroleum distillate. It smelled like, sometimes we can't tell what it is, but it could be gasoline, it could be lighter fluid, it could be any kind of petroleum distillate. But whatever this stuffed animal was appeared to have been saturated with it because it had weight to it. And it was an overwhelming odor that I experienced.
Are you able to say, when you were in that front passenger compartment, whether or not the seats would have been able to be moved after the fire was extinguished?
No, they were not.
How could you tell?
When fire occurs and is extinguished, it creates what's called protective patterns. So pretend that there's a fire up here at the desk that I'm sitting at, and this is more of a solid, not a light combustible. If this is in place at the time of the fire, and the fire department puts out the fire, and we move this after the fact, this is called a protected area underneath this item, right? So just like that example, if something is moved, a seat, for example, after the fire, after the extinguishment, you would see a protected area or a dischargement or unalignment of the fire debris.
Going back to that odor of petroleum distillate, are you able to tell us what some examples of petroleum distillates are?
Oh, gasoline, diesel, lighter fluid, solvents, paint thinners.
Thank you. You participated in the, actually before I go there, that item that you sensed that odor from was collected by the sheriff's office?
That's right.
You participated as well in the x-ray of the vehicle?
I did.
Did you observe any remnants of weapons or keys?
We did not.
What was the weather like on the day of the fire?
I believe it was light rain.
And is that something you would take into account during your analysis?
The weather in general, yes.
Okay. So to recap, go from front to back. The engine compartment of the trunk was not fire damaged.
Correct.
You could rule that out as the origin location.
That's accurate.
The trunk you also ruled out. How so?
Looking at the trunk, there was survivability, no direct flame damage to the majority of the trunk. We located remnants, if I recall correctly, bed sheet, female clothing in the back or in the trunk. No flame damage to those contents. If a fire originates in the trunk, there's going to be flame damage.
If the trunk is closed at the time of the fire, that would be an impediment because of lack of oxygen, correct?
Objection leading.
Why would the trunk being open or closed matter about the fire's ability to spread in the trunk?
In order to have combustion, in order to have fire, you need three things: oxygen, fuel, fuel, and a heat source. All right. So if you take away oxygen, there won't be fire. There won't be combustion.
Within the passenger compartment of the vehicle, while the window's down, there clearly would have been oxygen then, right?
That's correct.
Are you aware of, actually to finish up where I was going then, so that leaves us with the passenger compartment. Were you able to conclude that's where the fire started?
Yes.
All right, and just summarize how.
Based on the direct flame damage, the mass loss to the contents, as well as the seat cushions, was indicative of a fire coming from that area, originating in that area.
And are you able to come to a conclusion based on your examination, training, and experience as to how the fire started?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what your conclusion is and how you come to that conclusion?
Based on three main bullet points or data points, one being the presence of ignitable liquid, because at the time of my rendering of my report, I received a lab report from the Wisconsin State Crime Lab indicating a medium petroleum distillate was found in the stuffed animal debris. Witness statements is also something we take into consideration when we're determining origin cause, and a witness statement was reported that they had seen an individual walking away from the 2020 Honda Civic after throwing what the witness claimed appeared to be a lit lighter into the driver window. And then the third final bullet point that was important for consideration was the registered owner had been determined to be deceased and not the driver of the vehicle at the time of the fire.
Are you able to give us any information as to how fast a fire started in that manner could spread in a car like that?
Quickly. Ignitable liquid accelerates fires.
I have no other questions.
Cross.
Okay, so to back up a little bit. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Just to back up a little bit, I think what you were saying towards the end is that before you even begin your examination of the vehicle, you read witness statements and do a try to learn a little bit about the circumstances. Would that be fair to say?
Not always before we do an examination of the vehicle. I believe I'm not sure when I learned of that witness statement. That would have been after the scene exam.
Okay, you prepared an opinion and cause report though, right?
Origin and cause, correct.
Origin and cause report, right?
Correct.
And you drafted that report, and it has sections such as synopsis, narrative, and participants, right?
Correct.
And there's a section in there specifically entitled witness statements, right?
That's correct.
And that's because of what people say is important to know.
Correct.
As well as doing your own independent examination, because sometimes what people say is different than what actually happened.
Sometimes.
It's part of the reason why you go in and do an examination is to try to see if that version makes sense, for example, right?
We compare witness statements to physical evidence all the time.
And that's what you did here, right?
Yes.
Now, the bottom line, I guess the bottom line conclusion, if you will, is that the Honda Civic was lit on fire.
It was an intentionally set fire.
Not something that happens from the engine, right?
Correct.
And it's your conclusion that the intentionally set fire was a stuffed animal lit on fire and placed on the passenger side of the car. Do I have that right?
You do not have that right.
Okay, can you explain your conclusion?
So as I stated in my conclusion, it was the application of a open flame to ignitable liquid inside the passenger compartment. When ignitable liquid is used to start a fire or accelerate a fire, it's not pertinent for us to pinpoint exactly where that fire starts because, for example, if I poured gasoline throughout this room and lit it on fire after the fact, we wouldn't be able to distinguish where I actually put the open flame to the gasoline. Was it in the back corner or in the front corner? Because the damage is going to spread so quickly that the mass loss, the fire damage, isn't going to tell us where that poured gasoline, that poured ignitable liquid was first ignited. So my conclusion, if I believe my report is in front of you, is that it was an open flame ignition of a ignitable liquid, medium petroleum distillate, inside the passenger compartment.
Something like gasoline.
Medium petroleum distillate was the lab report.
Right, and you said before on direct that could be gasoline. Use that as an example.
A petroleum distillate is not a medium, gasoline is not a medium petroleum distillate.
Lighter fluid would be a medium.
Correct.
What we use to light a grill, right?
That is accurate.
Okay. So your conclusion is that something like that was used, right?
Correct.
On a stuffed animal.
That included a stuffed animal.
Well, there was you made particular note of the stuffed animal, didn't you? That the stuffed animal had an overwhelming odor of the medium petroleum distillate, right?
That's correct.
Which tells you, based on your experience, that stuffed animal, you believe, was sprayed or doused with that liquid, right?
Right. I think where we're missing each other is I did not say, nor would I say, that is the only location in the vehicle that had ignitable liquid doused or applied.
Right. The liquid could have been sprayed all over, as far as you know.
Correct.
Okay. You aware of any witnesses who saw someone spraying lighter fluid all over a vehicle?
No.
The only witness statement you're aware of is from a person who claims that a lit lighter was thrown into a driver's window from outside of a vehicle.
Correct.
And in fact, you found part of a Bic lighter on the back of the vehicle, right?
That's correct.
When you say Bic lighter, are you referring to the standard thing you would buy at a gas station? Is that what it looked like?
Correct.
The kind where a person would use to light a cigarette, right?
True.
You're, as an arson investigator or ATF employee, certainly you know that a Bic lighter, if a person lights it, the moment they let go of where their thumb would go, the moment they let go, the flame goes out, right?
Some lighters have a locking mechanism where you can lock the flame down.
Did this one have that?
I did not recover it, so I did not examine that.
So you don't know?
I don't.
And but you do know that the four windows were all likely open at least partially, right? At least partially open at the time of the fire, right?
Correct.
And that's based on the uniform fire mass loss, right? Or no, I'm sorry, that's based on the debris that you noticed in the windowsills, right?
Right. The window channel had significant glass still in it.
How far down were the windows at the time?
We weren't able to tell that. That's why I said at least partially down.
So it could be anywhere from just a tiniest little fraction down to fully?
No, we had more glass in the window channels than just a tiny bit.
Okay, so you're looking...
I can't quantify it for you.
Well, in the pictures we saw...
Mostly up there. There are two right here.
Well, if we take picture 61, for example, exhibit 61, for example. Thank you. If we take exhibit 61, for example, what does that show? Well, how do the windows look there?
The windows are gone.
What?
The windows are not evident in that picture.
They're gone, right?
Correct.
And so when you examined the vehicle, the windows themselves were already gone, right?
Like I said, I was able to see down into the window channels inside the door.
And why would windows be gone? Is that because the fire department personnel would knock them out?
Or the fire could have compromised them and they failed due to heat.
In other words, the fire could have cracked them.
But they were also down.
Now, the seat, in terms of the seat distance being back, before you were holding up a Kleenex box and moving it around in front of you, weren't you?
Correct.
As a demonstrative?
Correct.
Okay, so I want to understand the seat location in the vehicle. Is that something that you examined?
I did.
You look at how far back the seat is on the metal tracks, right?
We did in this case.
Okay, and in terms of was the driver's seat all the way back as far as it can go?
We did not manipulate it to see if it was all the way back as far as it would go. We just made note of where it was at that time.
Okay,
at the time of the fire.
Okay, so you didn't note how far back on the tracks it was itself?
No.
But it's your opinion that it wasn't moved by fire department personnel because why?
Again, if it had been moved, we would have had clean parts of the track. So if the seat is on a track,
right.
Everyone knows that. So if you move it after soot deposits, after a flame impinges upon it, it's going to then expose a clean part of the track. We didn't have that.
Well, did you have clean part? Right. Were there parts of the track that were clean and parts of it that had soot on it, or no?
There was I don't recall the exact visual of the tracks. We could tell that they had not moved, the seat had not moved from the time of the fire.
That's fine. Thank you, that's all.
If you had not had the witness statements, would your opinion about where the fire originated have changed?
No.
If you had not had witness statements, would your opinion about it being a result of an ignition of an ignitable liquid changed?
No.
Was the fire incendiary?
It was.
Meaning what?
It was an intentional act.
Nothing else.
No.
Thank you. Anybody need a break now? Oh, I see some hands. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute afternoon break, and then we'll be back with you. So just leave your notebooks on your chairs, please.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
And Fox 6's Brian Polson here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. We are in a brief recess from the Maxwell Anderson trial, the death of Sade Robinson. This is day 3. It is the second day of testimony. And this afternoon, we're getting a lot more in terms of visuals of what happened. We have seen the inside of Sade Robinson's apartment where officers responded when she was first reported missing. We've also seen her car, which was, according to expert witnesses who've testified, that car was automatically, or no, sorry, not automatically, that car was burned intentionally, that it was an arson fire. We just heard from a witness, an expert from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, a special agent there who said that he believes that an accelerant was used, specifically lighter fluid, or something like lighter fluid, that it was that he was able to detect an overwhelming odor of that accelerant on a stuffed animal that was in the passenger seat, and that he believes that an open flame was lit in the front compartment, setting that vehicle on fire. You heard from Tony Cotton, the defense attorney there at the end, trying to poke some holes in that by saying the only thing found inside was a Bic lighter, that there was a witness who saw someone throwing a lighter into the car, but he said that lighter was in the rear compartment, and he questioned whether or not a flame would still be active if a lighter like that was thrown into the car. There was some question about whether there could be a locking mechanism holding the flame in place while it was tossed in, but the ATF agents said they had not actually examined the lighter to see if it had that type of mechanism. In any case, we're hearing more about and seeing more of the evidence that the state has in its possession. As they walk us through the timeline, we're now seeing actual pieces of evidence that connect, for instance, Sade to the car and Sade to the clothing that was found in that car. That's one of the things we're going to talk about now, too. I think if I can show you this, that right here is the black puffy jacket and jeans that prosecutors and witnesses say, expert witnesses today, said that Sade Robinson was, first of all, these are what was found in the trunk of that vehicle. Sade Robinson's car, experts say it was an arson fire, an automatic or intentionally set fire, rather, and that inside that trunk of that vehicle, which was not, it was still relatively intact, they found this clothing. And most notably, if you see the positioning of the underwear as it is wrapped around the outside of the legs of those blue jeans. The expert witness who was testifying at that time, who was with the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office and has some ATF training in her background, said that this was how they found the clothing, and she believed that the placement of the underwear there was consistent with, that's the phrase she used, consistent with someone assisting in the removal of the clothing. Obviously, that would be a suggestion that someone other than Sade removed the clothing. They also presented this photograph, and that is of Sade Robinson in that same, what they say is that same jacket and in those same jeans, and also in the same light-colored shoes that were found inside that vehicle. One of them badly burned, one of them not so burned at all. But they say that is evidence that these were Sade's clothes that were found in the back of the car. So we know that they're trying to tie together, first of all, that this was Sade's car. We know that now, that the fire was intentionally set, that she had been wearing these clothes, and in fact that she had been wearing these very same clothes on that date, potentially with Maxwell Anderson. If we take a look at this, you see that she is in light-colored blue jeans. Whether or not those are the same exact ones that are found in the car, they have that light color to them. It seems to be that the prosecution is suggesting that that is the connection here. We're going to hear later in the case that Maxwell Anderson was spotted on a Milwaukee County Transit bus. First of all, that witness who saw someone throw the Bic lighter into the car described someone who matches Maxwell Anderson's matches what he looks like. At least that's our understanding. We'll probably hear from that witness later in this case. But we also have, or at least another witness who identified him being near the car. But that Milwaukee County Transit bus surveillance shows what appears to be Maxwell Anderson, according to prosecutors, in that same vicinity. So again, they're connecting these dots. You've got Maxwell Anderson on the date with her. You've got the phone pings back to her, or to his home. You've got the car that's ultimately found the next morning burned out in this building on the north side. You've got Sade's clothing, that she appears to be the same clothing that she might have been wearing. You have a detective saying that it appears someone may have removed that clothing for her. And then you also have Maxwell Anderson apparently spotted nearby. All of that paints the picture the state wants the jury to hear, that this couldn't have been anyone other than Maxwell Anderson. Of course, the defense continues to talk about the fact that this is all circumstantial, that they still don't have that direct evidence that Anderson did this, where he did it, with what weapon, where's the blood, where's the DNA. There was nothing indicative of Maxwell Anderson, they said, in that car. There is one thing that a couple of different witnesses talked about, and that is this. I've got to bring this up for you here. If you see this measurement, that is the edge of the front seat, the front driver's seat of that car. It is 20 inches back from, I'm guessing that's from the accelerator. But that distance, they said, did not seem to be consistent with someone of Sade Robinson's stature. In other words, was somebody else driving that car who was taller than Sade Robinson, who was a petite young woman. That seems to be the suggestion the state is making here. Again, the defense asked, Well, was the seat all the way back? Sometimes people get out of a car, they might move the seat all the way back before they get out. That seems to be what he was leading toward. The state's witness said that they didn't check to see if the seat was all the way back. They didn't adjust it at all. They just made the measurement to show how far that seat in back. Will that be relevant? Will that be important? Potentially it could be. Something else I want to show you though, and I actually misstated this yesterday. We've talked a couple of times, yesterday and today, about this fence. This is the fence that was rammed by a vehicle that prosecutors say was Sade Robinson's vehicle that leads to the pump house down by the water, Lake Michigan shoreline in Warnemont Park in Cudahy. And next to that fence, you have this. I keep mistakenly referring to that as a taillight. It's not a taillight, and it only makes sense it would be a headlight. Of course, strikes me that I should have known that all along, but it would be the headlight that is missing. Well, today we got a better look at that vehicle, and I want to show you, not only did we get the shots like this of the burned out car, and you can probably see down, that is the left headlight. There is a better look at it from, and maybe I don't have this one yet. I don't think I was able to get this one. Do I have this photograph? Let's see if I still have. Oh, I do have this photograph. I've got to drag it into where I can show it to you. Maybe I don't have it. I'll have to find it later. There is a shot of that same vehicle from the Milwaukee tow lot. It's being held in evidence, and from the front driver's side, it appears there is a missing headlight. So prosecutors are certainly suggesting that broken headlight that was found at the scene of the smashed fence belongs to the car that has that missing piece that was found burned out later on up on Milwaukee's north side. So we are hearing more. We're getting through some of the state's key testimony, but obviously still a long way to go. I think we heard from as many as five or six witnesses so far today. We heard from some this morning. We've heard from some, actually I think we heard from 9 this morning. We've heard a couple already this afternoon. They'll be coming back into the courtroom in a few minutes, and there will be more yet this afternoon. At 4 o'clock here on this stream, we're going to be heading over to Fox 6 News at 4. I'll be giving some updates there. Of course, all of our coverage of this trial on Fox 6 News at 4, 5, and 6. And later tonight at 9 and 10, we'll have some experts joining us to talk about what they've heard and what they observed so far, their analysis of the Anderson trial and the latest testimony that we've heard today, including cross-examination by the defense. But if you want to keep watching the live stream, if you want to keep watching testimony without interruption, without analysis, you can always do that at Fox 6 News Milwaukee's YouTube channel. We are carrying the trial gavel to gavel there with no interruptions. So right now, if you tune in, I imagine you would probably just see the eagle on top of a flagpole, which is the camera shot that they are required to have when the court is not on the record. And then when they come back on the record, you'll hear audio and they'll widen back out and you'll see the courtroom. But that'll be happening probably through 4:45 or 5 o'clock today before the court breaks for the day and heads into day 4 on Friday. I'm going to take a break right here, and we'll give you a little bit more before we head back into the courtroom, waiting to see when they come back on the record, which should be here very shortly. We'll take a break and be back right after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
And Fox 6's Brian Polson here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. It is, let's see, it is about 3:25. That's not what I wanted to show you there. I'll take that right out. It is 3:25, and we are waiting for court to come back in session in the trial of Maxwell Anderson. That is in the death and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. The court's in a brief recess right now. They are in the middle of testimony over the burned-out car that was found near 29th and Lisbon on the north side of Milwaukee on the morning of April 2nd. That is the same day that a human leg, Sade Robinson's leg, was found along Lake Michigan in Warnemont Park, and also the same day later that evening that she was reported missing by friends and coworkers when she did not show up for her shift at Pizza Shuttle. So far today, we have seen testimony that included an officer who was part of the search of Sade Robinson's apartment. When she was first reported missing, they went to do a welfare check. They got inside. They found a messy, but not particularly messy, typical college student's apartment. And there you go. You can see right there. Well, I guess I've got to bring that up for you. So you see a pretty typical studio apartment. There's a bed, there's a kitchen, there's a couch in a sort of makeshift living room. But nothing that demonstrated any sort of struggle. There was no forced entry. There was no sign of any kind of weapon, blood, anything like that. What they did find, and what the defense was able to get entered into evidence and into testimony, was they were able to find a safe that was locked, and inside that safe there were 47 pills of suspected methamphetamine and some THC. What does that have to do with anything? Well, that's what the state said when they asked the judge not to let the jury hear about that. But the judge allowed that evidence because the defense said it could be evidence toward a theory that someone else did this. For instance, someone, if she was buying drugs from someone involved in the drug trade, those tend to be people who have more of a propensity for violence, and the defense argued that that could be evidence consistent with someone else being a danger to Sade Robinson beyond Maxwell Anderson. The judge said it could be prejudicial to the jury, but she weighed the two and she felt it was
I
admissible.
understand the court wants to stop at 4:45.
I'm hearing
Does Your Honor want me to
some
just
discussion that is off the record right now, or at least maybe it's on the
we're
record,
done
but
with
it's
the
not
witness
with the
at
jury in the
4:40,
room,
and
so I
I know
don't
the
think we're going
next
to
one
take you
is gonna
back
be
just yet. But as I'm
long.
listening
Let me
in,
know. Okay.
I think fairly shortly they should be bringing the jury
Defense,
back
anything
into
to
the
address
room, and we
before
should
we
be
bring the
going.
No.
Oh, actually, you
We're
could
ready.
probably hear this too. I think I've probably got the sound up on that, don't I? I'm going to bring that down just in case anything. I think that is all on the record, but just in case we're off the record, I don't want to be putting that out over the stream. But it should be moments from now that we'll be heading back into the courtroom and hearing more. I just did hear them say that they plan on going through 4:45 today. The jury's coming back in right now. I'm seeing an update on that. So that means between now and 4:45, you can watch all of this on the Fox 6 News Milwaukee YouTube stream, or stick around here for the next half hour of live testimony, followed by Fox 6 News at 4 on this stream, and you are going to be able to see coverage from our reporters, Bill Miston, who is at the courthouse. We've obviously got other reporters who are covering this throughout the day. We've got photographers, reporters, producers, everyone's all over this. It's the biggest story right now in the Milwaukee area, and Fox 6 News is absolutely all over it. And we will continue to be right here on our digital platforms. Still not seeing any movement at the courtroom, so I'm keeping my eye on that. But we're going to be here every day from the Fox 6, or from the Wisconsin Live Desk, rather. I will be here and hosting, updating you on what's going on every day at 12:30. The court will likely be in recess, as they have been the last 2 days, so that'll give us about an hour and 15 minutes to get you up to speed on what's happened the day before, what you've missed so far in the trial, and what's happened so far on that particular day. And don't forget to check out Fox 6's Open Record. That is our weekly podcast. We'll be recording tomorrow morning. We're going to have a guest, an expert, criminal defense expert, Julius Kim from the law firm of Kim and Lavoie. Very experienced criminal defense expert and also former prosecutor. Sounds like the judge is back on the bench. The jury is back in the room, so we're going to send you now out live to the Milwaukee County Safety Building in the courtroom of Judge Crivello.
That the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You could please be seated, state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Megan McMahon. My first name is M-E-G-H-A-N-N. My last name is M-C-M-A-H-O-N.
How are you employed?
I'm employed as a trace evidence analyst at the State Crime Lab in Milwaukee.
What does that mean?
So trace evidence encompasses a variety of types of evidence submitted. It can include the analysis of glass, fibers, paint, general unknowns, and in this case, I analyzed evidence submitted for fire debris as well as physical fit.
What is physical fit?
Physical fit is the analysis of items that are broken to determine if they could fit together to form one contiguous piece.
Can you describe what your training, experience, and education is that allows you to work in this capacity?
So I have a Bachelor's of Science in Spanish from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I have a Master's of Science in Forensic Science from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. In addition to my education at the laboratory, I completed an in-house training program for both fire debris and physical fit. In general, those training programs encompass readings, lectures, hands-on exercises, and culminate in what is called a competency test, which is essentially a mock case.
How long have you worked in your capacity at the crime lab?
I've been at the lab in Milwaukee since 2015.
In your capacity at the crime lab, when you analyze something, you document it through a report, correct?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked exhibit number 438. Can you identify what that is?
Exhibit 438 is a copy of the laboratory report that I issued on May 16th, 2024 for laboratory case R24-952.
I'd ask that exhibit 438 be received. Any objection?
No.
It's received. And what does that report document?
So this report is a report of my analysis for item BD that was submitted to the laboratory for fire debris analysis.
What was item BD?
Item BD was one sealed paper bag that contained one gallon can that had burned debris in it that was reportedly recovered from a vehicle.
The number or lettering system, BD, is that how your lab keeps track of things?
Yes, when evidence is submitted to the laboratory, it's given a laboratory item designator. So we start at A and continue on until all the evidence for a case has been submitted.
Handing you what's been previously received as exhibit number 52. What is that?
So exhibit 52 is laboratory item BD for case R24-952, and I can tell that by this yellow sticker that's on the bag.
So exhibit number 52 is the item that you analyzed and subsequently documented that analysis in report with the exhibit 438 sticker on it.
That is correct.
Okay. Can you describe what you did upon receiving item BD or exhibit 52?
Yes, so I first would open up the bag, open up the can, do a visual exam of what's inside of the can. In this case, I couldn't determine what was inside the can, so I called it burned debris. After that, I take a charcoal strip and I suspend it inside of the can, put the lid back on the can, and then I put the can in an oven. So what happens when the can is in the oven is anything that's volatile or will go into like a gaseous state, we'll do that and it will adhere into that strip that I suspended inside of the can. The cans stay in the oven overnight for approximately 16 hours. After the 16 hours is up, I take the can out of the oven, I take the strip out of the can, and I put the strip into a small vial. Into that vial, I add a little bit of solvent or a little liquid. And what happens is anything that was stuck onto that strip that was in the can will then dissolve into that liquid. I then take the liquid and I analyze it on an instrument called a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer. And the data that I get from the sample that was analyzed on, or analyzed on the instrument, I compare to a reference that was also run on the instrument under the same conditions in order to come to a conclusion if an ignitable liquid is present or not. So in this case, I was able to conclude that a medium petroleum distillate was present in item BD.
What is a petroleum distillate?
So petroleum distillate is one class of ignitable liquids. Ignitable liquids are classified rather than identified because there can be, because manufacturers market the ignitable liquids to their end use. For example, medium petroleum distillate could be the same liquid, but it's marketed as a paint thinner or as a charcoal lighter fluid. So for ignitable liquid analysis, we classify them as opposed to identify them.
Are there other classifications of petroleum distillates?
There are light, medium, and heavy petroleum distillates.
What are some examples of a light petroleum distillate?
A light petroleum distillate could be charcoal lighter fluid. It could be say like a lighter fluid that you would use to light a cigarette. Compounds that are smaller than what would be a medium petroleum distillate.
What's a heavy petroleum distillate?
So a heavy petroleum distillate, something like that would be diesel fuel or kerosene.
What about regular gasoline?
Gasoline is its own classification.
And is it just gas or gasoline is its own classification, or is there a title for it? It's not?
It's gasoline.
Okay. Items like paint thinner and lighter fluid have smells to them typically in your experience?
I would say that petroleum distillates have a smell. I don't know what, in general, when I receive liquid as an item of evidence, I don't know where it's coming from, so I couldn't tell you if it was a paint thinner or a charcoal lighter fluid, but it does have a smell.
Did you note any odor from item exhibit number 52, item number BD?
Because it was debris, I did not smell it.
Petroleum distillates, including medium petroleum distillates, are ignitable liquids, correct?
Yes.
And what would ignite a liquid such as a medium petroleum distillate?
A flame.
Okay, a flame from anywhere?
Yes.
Okay, so a flame from a match?
A match, a lighter.
Okay, in addition to doing the ignitable liquid analysis, what else did you do as it relates to this case?
I also received broken pieces with the request to determine if a physical fit was present between these pieces and a vehicle that was submitted.
What was the vehicle that was submitted?
I'd have to refer to my report.
You drafted a report?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked exhibit 437. What is this?
Thank you. Exhibit 437 is a copy of the laboratory report that I authored on May 10th, 2024 for case R24952.
Does that document what vehicle you received?
Yes, I received a Honda Civic, Wisconsin license plate ASP-1171.
And does that actually physically come to you at the lab?
Yes.
Who did you receive that from? What agency?
It would have been received by our evidence technician, so I'm not sure what agency submitted it.
Does the vehicle itself receive an item number?
Yes.
What item number was the Honda Civic?
The vehicle was item BQ.
What else did you receive?
So I received items BR through BV, through BV, and those were all broken pieces that were submitted.
I'd ask that Exhibit 437 be received.
Any objection?
No.
437 is received.
Showing you what have already been received into evidence. I'll show you first Exhibit 28, 29, and 30, if you can identify what those are, if you've seen them before.
So Exhibit 28 is item BR for case R24952. And again, it has the yellow label that's put on at the laboratory.
And what is item BR?
Item BR was a broken mirror that was submitted. Exhibit 29 is item BS for laboratory case R24952. And item BS was a piece of broken black plastic. And then Exhibit 30 was received as laboratory item BT for case R24952. There were 5 pieces of broken black plastic that are inside here. So when I did my analysis, I sub-designated them as items BT1 through BT5.
And what about Exhibits 31 and 32?
So Exhibit 31 is laboratory item BU for case R24952. And this is a piece of broken black and silver plastic. And then Exhibit 32 is item BV for case R24952. This had 8 pieces of broken plastic inside, so during my analysis, I sub-designated them BV1 through BV8.
Why don't you start with item BR and walk us through what your analysis entailed?
So in general, with my analysis, what I'm first going to do is open up the broken pieces that were submitted, and I'm going to do a visual exam and a microscopic exam of those pieces and document what I observe. Then, if there are any of those pieces that look like they would fit together to each other, I would do that physical fit at that time. After I'm done with all of that, then I took all of the pieces and I went to the vehicle, which is in a different part of the laboratory, and I attempted to do a physical fit from the pieces to the vehicle. So there were 3 pieces that I was able to physically fit back to the vehicle.
And just as a preliminary question, to physically fit something together, does an item have to be broken?
Yes.
So if a piece of a car falls off but isn't broken, can you conclusively say that it comes from that car?
No. So in general, that conclusion might be something like detached but not broken from the vehicle. There might not be anything broken for a physical fit analysis to be attempted.
So it's fair to say that you're looking at how an item fragments when it's broken?
I'm comparing broken pieces to broken areas on the vehicle.
Okay, you said that there were 3 items that you were able to fit.
Yes.
What were those?
So I was able to fit item BT3, which was broken black plastic to the vehicle, the front grille area. I was able to fit item BS, which was a broken piece of the license plate holder to the license plate holder that was on the vehicle. And then item BU, which was broken black and silver plastic to the passenger side fog light area on the vehicle.
What about the other items?
So items BV3 through BV8, so submitted broken pieces, I was able to fit back together to each other, but that piece, there was nothing broken on the vehicle for me to attempt a physical fit for that. The same thing with item BV1 and BV2. There wasn't anything broken on the vehicle for me to attempt a physical fit. And then items BR, BT1 and 2, 4 and 5, there was no physical fit attempted. So the vehicle was damaged, it was burned. So for safety reasons, we didn't want to put it up on a lift. And the pieces that were not attempted appear to be interior pieces. So there was no more analysis done.
BV3 through BV8 are described as pieces of black glossy plastic, correct?
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but your findings were that all of those pieces fit together, correct?
Yes.
On the Honda Civic, item BQ, was there a part that was missing in the area where those items BV3 and BV8 would have fit?
So I was able to use that conclusion, detached but not broken, for the one contiguous piece that BV3 through BV8 formed. But again, there wasn't anything broken on the vehicle for me to do a physical fit for that.
Was there an area of the Honda Civic that was missing a piece consistent with what you put together for BV3 through BV8?
There wasn't anything there, but again, it wasn't, there wasn't anything broken on the vehicle.
Okay.
So it appeared as though, again, that piece fit in there, but I'm not able to do any more analysis in the sense of I can't say there's a physical fit because there was nothing broken for me to try to attempt to do a physical fit on.
And so that's where you come to the conclusion that it appeared to be detached?
Yes.
What about items B1 and BV2 that you described? Did you come to the conclusion that those items, when put together, appeared to have been detached from the Honda Civic?
Yes, it would be the same conclusion. BV1 and BV2 both appeared detached but not broken from the vehicle.
And again, that the area where BV1 and BV2 appeared to have been detached, there was the Honda Civic missing that particular piece?
The piece wasn't there, but I couldn't make a conclusion as far as if BV1 and BV2 were the pieces that belonged to the vehicle.
But the Honda Civic was missing that particular piece?
The pieces were not there, yes.
I don't have anything further. Cross?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So one part of your role in this investigation was to test some burn materials, correct?
Yes.
And did they arrive to you in like the big gallon bucket or 5-gallon bucket?
They arrived in a gallon can that was in this paper bag. Okay.
And when you're doing your testing, you're doing it at your lab, correct?
Yes.
And you said you didn't like smell the odor of the fragments or the burned materials, correct? Because you do like some sort of testing and you're able to determine that there's a petroleum distillate, correct?
In general, the only items that would be smelled would be liquids that are submitted. So because this was burned debris, I did not smell it.
But you have like instruments that tell you that it's petroleum distillate, correct?
Yes, the gas chromatograph mass spectrometer.
And can that determine whether something has like, I think they said a light, a medium?
Yes.
Okay. And you were able to come to the conclusion that, you know, this burn material it was ignited by like lighter fluid or paint thinner. Those are contained in petroleum distillate, correct?
I was able to conclude that a medium petroleum distillate is present There are lighter fluids and paint thinners that would be classified as a medium petroleum distillate, but there also are paint thinners and lighter fluids that might not be, which is why it's just a medium petroleum distillate.
Those are just common examples, right?
Yes.
And like lighter fluid and painter fluid, those are things people can purchase at like a hardware store, correct?
I would imagine so, yes.
Like a Home Depot, a Lowe's, an Ace Hardware, something like that.
I would think so, yes.
And then the other part of your investigation was to kind of, I mean, I'm just speaking in layman's terms here, is to, you get pieces of what might belong to a car and you determine if you can draw that conclusion, if these pieces came from that car.
The pieces have to be broken in order to do the physical fit analysis. So what I'm determining is if the broken pieces would fit to a broken area on the vehicle.
And your conclusion was that these broken pieces belong to this Honda Civic, correct?
3 of the pieces physically fit back to the vehicle.
All right, I have nothing further.
State? Nothing. Thank you.
Thank you.
He would then recall Detective Donner.
Second, your next box empty.
I'm sorry.
Second, your next box empty. Oh. We have a different court reporter, so we're going to re-swear you.
Oh, sure.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you could please be seated, restate and respell your name for the record.
Detective Joanne Donner, JoannDonner.
Detective Donner, as part of your follow-up investigation into this case, on October 1st of 2024, did you conduct an experiment related to the seat positions as they were known to have been found in Sade Robinson's Honda Civic?
I did.
Did that involve you going out to some car dealership in Milwaukee County?
It actually was in Waukesha County, Menominee Falls.
Okay. And tell us what the purpose of that experiment was.
I volunteered one of my detectives who is 6'1", which is based on the same DOT height for Maxwell Anderson, and another deputy who is 5'1", which is actually 1 inch taller than Sade Robinson's DOT. I couldn't find anybody that was 5 foot, so she would have to do. What I did was then go out to the dealership and found a 2020 Honda Civic, same model and make of her car, same year, and positioned the seat according to those that you saw in the arson photos. Then I was able to place Deputy Balsamo into the seat to see if that was a comfortable position for her to drive in, or if it would work better for Detective Blanchard.
In going to the dealership or dealerships, if you will, at some point were you able to determine what the value of a 2020 Honda Civic is?
Yes, the average value is approximately $20,000.
All right, so you took a deputy who was 5'1" and a deputy who was 6'1"?
Correct.
And did you take pictures of this experiment?
I did.
I'm gonna show you exhibits 90 through 108. Yep.
Tell me the numbers one more time.
90 through 108.
Thank you.
Are those the photos from the experiment?
They are.
Okay. Move 90 through 108 in.
Any objection?
No.
Received.
I asked to publish, not all of them, but a few.
Go ahead.
Detective Donner, what was the seat position of Sade Robinson's Honda Civic?
I had to base the measurements in the photos from the arson just based on what the curvature of, if it had cushioning and foam. So I used the frame of the lumbar support that seemed to be the most accurate. That position for the back would be 42 inches, and for the front edge of the seat would be 22 inches.
Okay, so did you position the seat of the Honda Civic you used for this experiment to that same position?
I did, with the exception of the back. It is the manual style, and I couldn't lock it in at 42 inches, and I could only lock it in at 43. So it was 1 inch farther back on the back of the seat.
All right, and then did you have both deputies sit in that seat?
I did.
For starters, these are the two people you used, right?
That's correct.
The one on the right actually testified in this trial.
Correct.
Okay. And then could you show me the picture of the, you pick out the picture of each of them sitting in the seat when it was at the distance of Sade's car, when Sade's car was recovered?
I took several photos showing the arm extension and also the feet towards the foot pedals.
I'm going to show on the TV 94 and 95. When you had the 5'1" deputy sit in the chair, were her feet able to touch the pedals?
No, they were not.
And her arms, exhibit 95, fully outstretched?
Fully outstretched, elbows locked.
When Detective Blanchard on the right here sat in that seat, how did that go?
Much better.
97, feet reached the pedals comfortably
Yes, they did.
and sat in the chair comfortably.
Correct.
Looks relaxed.
Yes.
Did you then have, what was her name again?
Balsamo.
Can you spell it for the record?
I sure can. It's Balsamo.
Did you have Deputy Balsamo adjust the seat to a position where she felt comfortable?
I did.
And did you have Detective Blanchard sit in that seat?
I did.
Can you show us what that looked like? Here's Exhibit 102. Scrunched up to the front.
Yes.
Attorney Vance Cruzan, can you use the mic, please?
All right, Judge.
That's okay.
All right, and head not comfortable.
It was actually touching the ceiling. He could not put it back any farther. He had to be hunched over forward to fit.
Nothing else.
Cross?
So if I understand correctly, all you did was test the seat for, well, first of all, the car itself was burned away. The seats were burned away, right?
Correct.
The cushioning was gone.
Correct.
And so you're using the metal that would have been behind the cushioning for the measurement. Do I have that correct?
Along the sides, you can see there's a part of the lumbar that curves. That's what I was using to base my measurement, and then feeling through the vehicle that we used for the experiment.
Got it. And it was a manual seat.
It was.
Is that the same as Sade's car?
I do not know because her car was so badly damaged on the inside.
Okay, so we don't know if it was manual or automatic.
Correct.
But as I understand it, you used only two people
All
for
right,
this.
so we are going to dip out
experiment.
of that coverage for now here on from the Wisconsin Live Desk. We're about a minute away from Fox 6 News at 4. Today we have learned a lot more of the state's case. We've seen images of that burned out car and heard that they have experts who say that it was intentionally set on fire. We're now hearing about their theory that the vehicle's front passenger seat was set back at a distance that was consistent with the height of Maxwell Anderson driving that vehicle rather than the short stature of Sade Robinson, who owned that car. Obviously, much more to come here from the Wisconsin Live Desk. Also, Fox 6 News at 4, 5, and 6, and 9 and 10. We hope you'll stick around. We'll be back here tomorrow at 12:30, and we will see you here again soon.
With stories that matter to you. Fox 6 News at 4 starts right now with breaking news.
And that breaking news is coming from Kenosha, where we're hearing from the sheriff's office. They say they've arrested 2 suspects in the 2003 cold case murder of David Vanderzee.
Roxana Collins of McHenry, Illinois, and John Viscasil of Genoa City have been arrested. They both were likely facing charges of first-degree intentional homicide as a party to a crime.
We'll keep on top of that story. Let's get to our big story now at 4. It is day 2 of testimony in the Maxwell Anderson homicide trial.
Today, jurors were shown evidence of clothing that matches those worn by Sade Robinson that she was last seen in, found in the trunk of her burned-out car.
Brian Polson joins us live from the Wisconsin Live Desk with one of the latest developments here as the trial continues this afternoon. Brian?
Yeah, we know that Sade Robinson and Maxwell Anderson, of course, went on a first date on April 1st. It was early the next morning that police were called to 29th and Lisbon for a suspicious car fire. We heard from experts today from the ATF and the state crime lab who say that fire was set on purpose. They say they believe lighter fluid used, an accelerant of some sort, that was lit by an open flame. They also talked this afternoon, they're going through testimony right now, that the driver's seat was in a position they believe was consistent with Maxwell Anderson's height that was too far back for Sade Robinson. Now, in the back of that car, they found clothing, including a puffy jacket and light-colored jeans, matching what Sade Robinson was seen wearing as she left her apartment for work the morning of April 1st. Those jeans, or at least jeans that the state says were consistent with what she was wearing, were found in her car, and they had the underwear on the outside. A detective said that was how they found them, and she believes that was consistent with someone else removing Sade Robinson's clothing. The suggestion that Maxwell Anderson would have been the one who did that before setting the car on fire. We also got a look inside Sade Robinson's apartment today in Brewers Point. That's next to Lakefront Brewery. It's a studio apartment. Little messy, consistent with the life of a college student, but detectives say there was no sign of a struggle there. However, police did find suspected methamphetamine pills and THC. The defense insisted that should be introduced as evidence because they say it could suggest she may have associated with dangerous people in her life other than Maxwell Anderson. The state objected to having that entered into evidence, but the judge overruled and allowed it in. Obviously, a lot of developments happening in this case day by day. We're going to keep covering it from the Wisconsin Live Desk on Fox 6 News and all of our shows. And of course, you can watch coverage on the Fox 6 News Milwaukee YouTube channel. With that, I'm Brian Polson at the Live Desk. Back to you guys.
Brian, thanks for keeping us in the know. And our legal expert and criminal defense attorney, Jonathan Lavoie, will join us tonight on Fox 6 News at 9 and 10. He'll talk about how the defense, what their strategy is shaping up to be after the second day of testimony. That's tonight on Fox 6 News at 9 and 10. And as the Anderson trial continues, we are streaming it gavel to gavel on Fox Local, the Fox Local mobile app, and of course, Fox 6 News Milwaukee, our YouTube channel. Also on Fox Local, you're free to review any previous day's testimony and check out more in-depth coverage of the murder of Sade Robinson.
A St. Francis High School coach is no longer with the district. Police arrested him on accusations of sexual assault. The superintendent sent a letter to parents explaining the junior varsity baseball coach has been released from all coaching responsibilities. The school superintendent tells us the investigation involves JV coach Jeff Worrell. He was booked into the county jail Sunday and brought in by MPD for accusations of repeated sexual assault of a child. Worrell posted bail the next day. A student says she was aware of the coach through a different youth baseball league.
I didn't really know the guy that well, but it's kind of shocking considering that like a high school baseball coach was just like arrested.
Worrell has not yet been charged with a crime. The superintendent says the district is fully cooperating with law enforcement.
There's a risk that Milwaukee Public Schools will lose even more state money. Tomorrow is the deadline to turn in required financial reports. Jason Calvi is live with the money mess, holding up your tax dollars.
Kim, we don't know exactly how much the state's going to hold back from MPS if they miss tomorrow's deadline, but we know last year the state held back from MPS $16.6 million. That's money that MPS never got. It's money meant for special education. The state still holds it tonight, like it's done since last June. Yes, June of 2024.